Hearthstone Global Games is an epic country versus country tournament where teams of 4 card slingers each clash for national pride. But in the end, the UK always wins.
Wait, everybody knows it's Germany always wins.
Aren't you Polish?
Is winning all that matters? It's all about fun and getting along with your teammates.
That's easy when their skills are legendary.
Or in this case, you have an ace player who will never let you down.
So we're gonna see the same old archetypes then?
No, every team needs to bring all 9 classes.
So we're gonna see Hunter?
I wonder.
So let's recap. It's 4 regions, 48 countries, but
Only one winner. Get ready
for the Hearthstone
Global Games.
Hello everyone and welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are around the world. This is the Hearthstone Global Games Week 4. I'm Raven and joining me is, as always, Sottle, ready to bring you some awesome Hearthstone matches today. How are you doing today? You looking forward to this?
I am doing fantastic. This is, for me, one of the most exciting weeks that we have dealt with so far. There's a definite theme running through the entire day, at least for day one, of APAC countries, Asia-Pacific countries coming up against European opposition. And I think this is something that Lorinda and Falcone talked about extensively last week. It's the need for APAC to prove themselves as a region, to improve their standing in the eyes of the casual onlooker. And they have a fantastic chance to do that today.
Yeah, and before we get into it and check out how the groups are doing, we can check out the actual format for the Hearthstone Global Games. This is going to be going on for 10 weeks for Stage 1. It's going to be 8 groups of 6 teams each. A total of 48 countries going to be battling it out to be able to move on to Stage 2.
Yeah, and Stage 2, the cream rises to the top, we whisk it all out, and then we run it all back again. Round robin goes for 3 more weeks, with 6 groups of 4 teams taking place, and then the top places in that will fill out our 16-team single elimination bracket, the top 4 of which then conclude this entire event in our epic LAN finals.
Yeah, and they're going to be epic indeed, as the winner will basically be able to say we're the best Hearthstone country effectively in the world. It's pretty good bragging rights. It's going to be great when the UK has those bragging rights as well. So we'll see. We'll see how we go in the next few weeks, actually, before I get too braggy about it.
I was going to say, you're setting yourself up for failure there, Raven. We tried it on week 1, and it all went miserably wrong against the USA. So let's just slow our roll just a little bit for a couple of weeks.
Nothing like confidence is what I say. But we can check out the groups now and actually see where everyone is standing after 3 weeks of global games. Group A, Sweden at the top there with a 1-0 match record so far. Switzerland at the bottom with a 0-1. Everyone else in between has played 1 additional match, but they're all 1-1. So this group is, I think, the only group that's like completely all up for grabs at this point. If Sweden and Switzerland win their next games, it's suddenly all very, very close.
Yeah, and you'll see as the groups develop here, as we slide through them, that some groups are going pretty much as you'd expect. Some of them have big surprises. I think in this one, Group A, Sweden and China are the 2 teams that you would expect to be making an early push, although China not really breaking out of the pack. You can see very, very middle of the ground action throughout, places 2 through 5 there. China, Indonesia, Bulgaria, and Brazil, all more or less tied, even including that game record.
Yeah, the game records are going to be used as effectively a tiebreaker for any, tied up match records as we move into the top cut. Moving on to Group B, though, United States all the way at the top with 2-0. Very, very convincing matches so far, I have to say. 6-1 in game record. They're looking absolutely dominant and potentially the most dominant team so far in global games.
Yeah, but this was a huge group overall. Netherlands, fantastic level of strength. United Kingdom, we at least know how strong some of those players are, but then Romania as well was someone that people had an eye on, led potentially by the power of RDU, one of the most accomplished competitive players in Hearthstone. So far, 0-2 and a 1-6 record, the exact inverse of the United States. So they have a serious amount of work to do, and there's been rumblings, even from some of the Romanian players that they think it might actually be over already. That's not going to stop them, playing every game out and trying to do their best to push this through, but it's a real uphill climb for them now.
Yeah, they've got more matches coming up, so they are going to be able to at least have a fighting chance at coming back into that group. Moving on to Group C, though, Russia only played one match so far, but that was a 3-0 victory, so a great way to kick off for those. New Zealand and Argentina, Spain, Austria going down the middle, but it's actually Austria and Australia. They're going to be 0-1 with not too great game records either, but we are going to be seeing Russia and Australia a little bit later on today.
Yeah, facing off against each other, no less. So Australia have the chance to just completely flip this group on its head. If they pick up a 3-0 win against Russia, then everything is wide open yet again, but Russia were my pick for this entire event. I'm expecting another big performance from them.
I don't even slip that in every time. It's like, oh, Russia are doing well. It's my pick.
Yeah, once they lose, I'll stop mentioning it,
I thought so. Group D, one of the less prolific groups, I would say, when we look at, for example, the USA group, the Russia group, but Slovakia, Hungary, and Portugal with victories there. South Korea's played 2 matches themselves. South Korea, my pick, and I'll even go with the good and the bad. Currently 1-1, but I have great confidence. The big talking point in this group is Greece, though.
Yeah, Greece is 0-2, perhaps not quite as surprising as seeing Romania at 0-2 for the casual onlooker, but Greece have some real powerhouse players. They have enough high-quality Hearthstone players to have put out an entire B team in this tournament. They could have found 4 extra players, no problem, to have a very competitive roster. So seeing them at a 0-2 record is honestly quite shocking to me, and hopefully they can start to turn it around, but exactly the same spot as Romania. The one thing they do have going for them is that their game record is just a little bit more healthy than Romania's was, so maybe that gives them more of a shot.
Yeah, and then Group E is going to be Italy and Japan, currently 1-0 in their groups. Finland, Norway in the middle, and Chile and Israel bringing up the rear of the group. Just 2-3, though, game score, so as good as it can get for any team that loses their first game. But the match we've got coming up is actually going to be Italy versus Japan. So this is going to be the match that actually, who's going to get ahead and knock their nearest challenger down a peg or two.
Yeah, and it's a huge match, honestly. I think it's one of the most important matches in terms of standing that we've had so far in the event, because this is a group that is crying out for someone to really, take it by the neck and really make it their own. Italy and Japan are the 2 countries in position to do that, and they play each other in game 1. So as you said, the winner is going to be looking rosy going forward in that group.
Yeah, then we see Group F with Canada. Absolutely dominant performance so far. 2-0 at a 6-0 game record. Absolutely amazing for Canada. Malaysia, Denmark currently 1-0 as well. Belgium, France 0-1, both with 0-3 game records. And then Kazakhstan bringing up the rear 0-2 in this group.
And I think one of the big overall talking points, we mentioned USA doing very well. The North American countries as a whole have been doing fantastically in this event. Recently, we saw DreamHack Austin as well, which was, of course, on home turf. For North America, they had the majority of players, but still, complete dominance by North America. So are we seeing a changing of the guard? Are we finally seeing North America really step up to the plate, starting to dominate the Hearthstone scene? Because Canada certainly taken up that mantle and said, hey, anything you can do with your 6-1 record, USA, we can do just a little bit better with a 6-0.
The main problem is if that happens, we are never going to hear the end of it, unfortunately. But moving on to Group G, Turkey.
Wait. Because we let them off easy when Europe was winning
Exactly.
Right?
We were very gentlemanly and polite about it. Group G, Turkey leading the pack with a 2-0 match record and a 6-2 game record. One of the sort of surprise teams coming out of Hearthstone Global Games, to be completely honest. We didn't really know too much about the players. We hadn't seen some huge performances from a lot of the players from Turkey, but as a team, they have been dominating. Even, the record looks great, but even in the matches as well, they've looked so confident.
Yes.
A few of them play together, like in the same room. They look really happy. Looks like they're just having a lot of fun as well as winning. So you can't really argue with that kind of teamwork.
No, I think Turkey are one of the real teams that have kind of fulfilled the prophecy, if I can put it like that. Everyone said coming into this, one of the big exciting things, some of these countries that don't get a lot of exposure, can they hang? Are they good enough? Can they really step up to the plate and make an impact? Turkey have answered that so far with a very emphatic yes.
Yeah, and speaking of impact, we have Ukraine and Czech Republic rocking the top of Group H 2-0 with some very, very strong records as well. And then Philippines at a 1-1 point. Belarus not played yet, but Germany 0-2 and Croatia also 0-2. Germany as well. We can talk about the winning teams quite a lot. We'll talk about them a little bit later as Ukraine is playing today.
Yes.
But then, Germany, I think the big talking point of this group specifically.
Yeah, Germany have got themselves into a little bit of a mess. They played Ukraine in the opening week. Ukraine, one of the most powerful countries in this entire tournament. Germany are as well. So someone was going to have to lose that game. The problem is that whoever lost that game between Germany and Ukraine was absolutely going to have to avoid losing the follow-up game, because that was going to put them in a horrible position overall. Germany, unfortunately, failed to do that, and they could end up being our very first giant slain in this tournament.
Yeah, it would be a huge surprise to see Germany knocked out, as the country itself is just a powerhouse in Hearthstone overall. You know, not even just particularly in global games, but in Hearthstone overall, in all types of competition. They've got so many very, very strong players, so it'll be a true surprise, but we can check out the matches we've got coming up today. And as we mentioned, it's pretty much going to be Europe versus the Asia Pacific region for Hearthstone. Kicking off the day, as we mentioned earlier, is going to be Italy versus Japan to see who's going to wrestle for that top spot in the group. Then it's going to be followed up by Belgium versus Malaysia as well. Another one I'm looking forward to seeing the Malaysian players play yet again.
Yeah, and then it's Russia looking to follow up on that 1-0 record so far against Australia, who had the inverse, 1 loss and 0 wins. Of course, Australia do represent the Asia Pacific region, at least in terms of, you know, which server they play on for Hearthstone, which region their points count towards, all that kind of stuff. So again, continuing the theme, Philippines up against Ukraine. We've mentioned Ukraine, perhaps to people that don't really follow Hearthstone and just have these kind of conventional opinions to which countries are sporting or esports powerhouses. Ukraine might be a little bit surprising, but they are one of the absolute dominant countries in this tournament. Philippines have got another huge battle up against them, but they overcame Germany on the previous week, so they know all about the odd giant killing.
Yeah, that's definitely a tough one for me, because I love the Philippines team. I think it's awesome. They're all super cool, but Ukraine's got Hippie. It's got Nick Chipper. I mean, come on. Some of our favorite players, or some of my favorite players at least. I know some of yours as well. And then finish up, there's Netherlands versus Thailand. So that's going to be a huge one as well. As Netherlands just want to continue putting those points on the board, because they've got another country with such a powerful team.
Yeah.
But we've seen powerful teams, you know, lose a lot of matches so far in global games. So it's very easy to slip. And the second you lose one match, it's like, okay, you know, it's a little bit rough, but it's fine. Second you lose two, you're like, we just have to win the rest of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of countries, as you saw, going through those group brackets that are hanging around at that 1-on-1 ratio, which means a second loss being picked up definitely doesn't spell the end, but it means you're probably then scrapping for that maybe third place in the group, just trying to squeeze yourself out.
And then when tiebreakers and stuff come into it as well, sometimes you can get the points to get in that joint third place, but then the tiebreakers just end you, basically, and you miss out on that fact. So it's going to be a rough spot for a lot of these teams as we move on throughout stage one of global games. We can check out the first match we've got coming up today. What that looks like, it's going to be Italy versus Japan. Always love watching Team Japan play. B787 was in fact my pick for the Winter Championships. Didn't do too well in the actual championship event, but super cool guy. Has a really cool approach to the game in that he just likes certain decks. He likes Control Warrior. He likes control styles in general.
Yes.
Played a lot of the Reno, Kazakus, Mage, Warlock decks as well. Even played Priest at the championship as well. So I do just like his overall thoughts and style to the game, but he's backed up by a pretty solid squad himself.
He is, and I love that as we see some shots of Italy here, starting with the beautiful Colosseum in Rome. I do love that B787 has followed up his big break with the HCT performance. He finished rank 2 on ladder this season, primarily running the Discover Mage, which, as you mentioned, had a bit of a affinity for Reno Mage in the past, and that deck almost feels like kind of a natural successor to that kind of style. Very, very different in some elements, but along the same game plan.
Yeah, and you know, he even has Tunsoku on the team as well for Japan, who's very recently qualified for a major in Japan as well. So he'll be traveling to one very soon. I think he's got it's a top 8, so he got the qualification into the top 8 of the finals. So he's looking at pretty strong as well. But Italy is going to beat their opponents. What do you think of Italy as a team? Because they're pretty much just the top HCT point earners for the country. Are the team, which is a bit of a difference.
Yeah, and there's a lot of HCT points there. You know, they have Turner, who has the real pedigree in terms of HCT performances. But as you will see as we go through some of these players, there is a large amount of points between them. And if you don't know what these points mean, you know, they are your real indicator of A, how good you are as a player throughout the previous year, but secondly, also how much work you've put in, which is not something that you can understate. This Italy team is a team of very, very hard workers, and that level of research can work work out in a format like this, right?
Yeah, and this format you can see on the screen now, we see all the players and the order they're going to be playing in. They will play one game against the player opposite them. So it's going to kick off with Snowman versus Tonsoku. And out of the 2 decks, they have to pick one. So it's almost a self-ban. They pick which deck they want to play a best of 1, and then the first overall team to get to 3 wins the series. The players, although maybe alone in a physical nature, can communicate over voice comms, or they can just all go to the same place. We'll no doubt see some of that today. So it is a full team effort, but there is at any given time 1 player piloting that deck.
Yeah, and straight away, just leaping out at me. There's a lot of different strategies coming in and evolving about this format as we move forward. But one thing that's been fairly common has been teams splitting up the power classes, right? They wanted always to have an opportunity to play Mage in one series, Paladin in another series, Warrior in another, Rogue in another, potentially just leaving that. But you can see Snowman had Mage and Paladin available to him, which means always, in every scenario, one of either Mage or Paladin is not being played by Italy in this series.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to me, to be honest, because we've seen the power of Paladin. It almost feels like as long as you've got a couple of Murlocs in there, you just drop any 30 cards and the deck's probably good. We've seen so many variations on the sort of mid-range to control-ish Paladin lists. And, one even recently winning DreamHack Austin, Shoot bringing his even like later game Paladin the most.
N'Zoth Paladin, right?
Yeah. So Paladin's in a very, very good spot at the moment. But like you said, like compared to Mage as well, I've been playing a lot of Mage the past few weeks. That deck is very, very strong. And on Tonsaku's side, we see Druid and Shaman put next to each other. And I think this feels more natural because Shaman isn't really a class that's sticking out to me as any kind of powerhouse at the moment, whereas Druid, we've seen a few variations. Jade wouldn't be a surprise from Japan, to be completely honest, as Jade's really, ramping up in terms of how powerful it is at the moment.
Yes.
Pun intended. And there is, the strength of the aggro list as well. So it's definitely some flexibility, and gonna ask Snowman a couple of questions as to what Druid is this that they're playing.
Yeah, absolutely is. I just want to quickly point out, as you go down Japan's list there, they've had the same idea, B787, Mage and Paladin together. So both of these teams have felt like only having one of Mage and Paladin available to them is the correct way to go to this. And there is some level of understanding on my part of that because, I've tried to break this format down a lot just in preparation. It's hard to find natural partners. When you take those 4 power classes that we mentioned, it's hard to then pair them evenly with other classes. You do have to do some gymnastics along the lines, but it might also just be reads from the teams as what they're expecting to go up against from their opponents.
Yeah, and we can see some extra information for you about the players. Tonsaku actually was in Last Call Invitational for the Asia Pacific region, so that was, I think, the first time I personally cast some of his games. Very strong player. Ended up 2nd place. So one match from going to BlizzCon. So that would have been absolutely huge to play in the World Championships for him. So, just that in itself, the highest points overall. And then actually just playing in that tournament and being 1 match away from the World Championships. That could have changed everything, for Tonsaku.
Yeah, and you start to see this kind of ladder pedigree of these Italian players coming out. 45 total HCT points in 2016 is not up there in the heady heights of the 3-figure totals that we saw from some of the last call players, but anything around that 50 mark is a very decent chunk of points for you over the year. 6 top 100 legend finishes, but apparently not a Frozen fan, so please stop asking him about it.
Yeah, miserable to me. Miserable. Whether you like Frozen or not, I think building a snowman is a fun activity. I'm not sure, depending on where they are in Italy, I'm not sure how much snow they get.
Yeah, probably not that much.
Yeah, it's probably not too much snow, so maybe that's why it's like, stop asking me, I really want to, but there's no snow around, so
he very
it just makes him feel bad.
definitively said he does not want to build a snowman. Even given the opportunity, he would turn it down.
Seems a bit grumpy to me, but we'll see how these teams go up against each other. It's going to be Paladin versus Druid. I mentioned Jade Druid. Are you expecting Jade from Japan here?
I would. I'm expecting Jade Druid in general. I think based off, originally, I think it was the list that Mage posted. Mage is a player that I'm going to go on record now and say you'll be hearing a lot more about over the next 12 months or so. He was a player that Shitanudachi credited as a big practice partner for his Bahamas win, but Mage posted a list that he was in and out of Rank 1 Legend with that introduced the Tar Creeper, had a Gluttonous Ooze in there as well. The list that's slowly becoming more and more standard, and I think the power level of that deck is slowly taking over, but we just got a little preview preview that Japan have pulled the old bait and switch, and this is a point that we can lead into here. We, as naive, predictable casters, have said, hey, Japan, hey, Jade Druid is strong right now. The APAC regions have generally favored Jade Druid over the last few weeks anyway. Obviously, Japan are going to bring Jade Druid. If that read is so easy to make on you as a country, then you switch and you go aggro Druid. And that is exactly what Japan have chosen to do.
Yeah, so, we talked about overall class pairing tactics for this format, but also, personality/player pairing comes into it. We saw it from USA the other week when, Dog's playing Warrior. Pirate Warrior. I don't think I've ever seen Dog play Pirate Warrior. It came out the gate, he got a very quick win with it, and that was probably unexpected from his opponents. But let's talk about this game. It is the Murloc Paladin and the variant with Blessing of Kings, so a slightly more aggressive list as opposed to the more late game control list we've been seeing as well. So there's going to be Murlocs everywhere in this game.
Yeah, and Tansoko here, Bloodsail Corsair, of course, on turn 1. Does need to develop it here. It is a huge swing when it kills the second charge of a True Silver if you do get that, but the power of patch is in play, the fact you already have Mark of the Lotus to start really pressing damage here, and the fact that the one thing you need to shut down from Paladins is if they play a 1-drop, you have to kill that 1-drop, because if you do not, they will snowball the board and you will never get it back.
Yeah, that's the main point of this earlier Murloc list as well, is that, all the Murlocs stack and buff onto each other. So, even the Valfin Inquisitor 1-3, suddenly turn 2, it's easily a 2-4 most of the time, and then there's, the Rockpool buff sit comes onto the board, then suddenly you're so far behind you can't really ever get onto the board, especially as the aggro Druid as well.
And it was an interesting decision right off the bat from Italy that they chose not to go too greedy on looking for a 1. They kept, I believe, Rockpool Hunter and Murloc Warleader in their opening hand. Keeping Warleader on the coin almost always makes sense, but this deck is so focused on snowballing 1-drops that when you don't hit a 1-drop, you just create these exact kind of situations right now where you have these awkward kind of plays. So I wonder if maybe Rockpool Hunter going back and looking to go hit a 1-drop and then go 1 coin Warleader would have been more beneficial from Snowman's perspective.
Yeah, we might even see a coin into Burn Bristle instead to buy them time to make. If you can't get something early in terms of Murlocs, go 1, 2, 3, then you wait a little bit and try and at least put 2 Murlocs on the board together to then start battling for the board. But Team Japan, Tansoko is just going to go for it anyway, just drop his own Bluegill and start pressuring. Does have the Finja the Flying Star ready for turn 5, which is an absolutely huge swing card. But with Savage Roar and Mark of the Lotus, Japan could already be setting up just to, ways to end the game. Because that's what you kind of do with this deck, right? You look at your hand, go, okay, how much damage next turn, how much potential damage the turn after? And if that's anywhere close to lethal, you probably just go for it, because the odds on you drawing even more damage is very high.
Yeah, it starts to get a little bit more complicated, because your equation is usually how much damage do I do this turn by just purely going face, and then you have to subtract the amount of minions that you lose by making inefficient trades because you've chosen to go face, then the amount of damage the next turn, etc., etc. But yeah, Japan's hand a little bit minion light right now. Mark of the Lotus is almost never a card you're sad to have in your hand. It's actually one of the highest win rate cards when kept in Mulligan in this matchup. In this deck in general, predictably alongside things like Innovate and Finja, because Finja is only being kept when you have Innovate, for example. But Mark of the Lotus, in terms of just, a standard vanilla card, is right up there in terms of early power, and you can see exactly why. Takes out Burn Bristle without losing a single minion. Hero power buffed up the 2 health on the Corsair to 3. Massive, massive value trade, and now that Savage Roar is threatening huge amounts of damage at any point now.
Yeah, I think it's about 15 damage, so just puts your opponent very, very low indeed, just for want of using it. Because as you said, there's nothing currently available for Japan next turn anyway, so a lot of the time, and a mistake maybe, well, now that's changed, but a mistake maybe some newer players make with Savage Roar is they wait till lethal, and they actually, a lot of the time you want Savage Roar when you can get just the most damage you're ever going to get in the game out of it, most of the time. Very similar to Bloodlust as well.
Yes.
Once you have the board and you can get the value, you almost always use it, unless you draw a Warleader that's going to buff a Murloc already on the board, and it's just another minion for the Savage Draw potentially next turn anyway.
It's a tad awkward here for Tansoko. That Warleader is a fantastic draw, don't get me wrong, but he's just considering the implications of Consecration, which would be a mess on this board. It would leave behind just the 3-1 Warleader, but he's looking at this situation, he's like, hey, it's a value trade. I threatened essentially lethal with Savage Roar on the following turn. If Consecrate does come down, Finja go, we're still in a great spot.
Yeah, I think as well, like Finja, living mana, so on, so on. Like you've got plenty of reload if that's the case. We do see Snowman is gonna, do the Murloc tricks and trade into the War Leader, but there's still so much damage onto the board. Mark of Yashara gonna be the draw for Tonsoku, but no Beast to get the cycle, but still some extra damage and a potential combo with Savage Rod this turn.
17, I think. 3, 5, 7 plus the 8 from Savage Roar plus 2 more from Mark, so that would be 17 damage this turn. He's just nearly over the line already.
You just put him to 3.
You do lose a lot of board presence if you do that, but forcing through as much damage as you possibly can before Spike Ridge Steed definitely has some merit, but I feel like with Finja coming down here, you have exactly 1 War Leader, 1 Bluegill left in the deck, because remember, this is the pure Finja package that we're used to seeing previously.
This is not this new Paladin shenanigans where random Murlocs get popped out by Finja.
So if this Finja gets to trade into something, he pulls another Charger next turn, guaranteed, with the Bluegill Warrior, and that's another charge minion he gets to add to the Savage Roar damage.
Yeah, much more likely to power through anything awkward that could come out from Team Italy. Hydrologist can help a little bit maybe if Noble Sacrifice is pulled, but that just makes the whole turn weaker because then it's only going to be a hero power follow-up. And look at this Divine Favor in hand. There's even reasonable odds that Consecration might not even be in the deck, or there's just a one-of, which makes this even better for Japan because Consecrate is one of the cards that can actually just completely mess up the game plan because the sheer volume of low health minions.
Yeah, I didn't want to preach too much, but I am really heavily against playing Consecration in the aggressive Murloc deck. I think when you're playing a deck that wants to snowball 1-drops as aggressively as this does, drawing, a 4-mana low effect board clear is not really what you're looking for. When I've been playing this deck without Consecrations in it, one of the matchups that has definitely suffered is this one exactly, because even if they don't get ahead on the board early, you kind of just lose outright to living mana when that card comes down if you don't play Consecration.
Yeah, and this is just going to be lethal. Easy game, easy life here for Japan as the Token Druid or Aggro Druid actually goes very, very well. And this just seems like one of the easiest games we've even seen in HGG, to be honest. Outside some Pirate Warrior matches, like this just seems so straightforward. And I think, as you mentioned, Snowman not having a 1-drop and not having anything to even try and battle for the board within 2 turns was just absolutely detrimental to that game. And you just saw that just kind of snowball away.
And this is a real key point about competitive Hearthstone, and a point that the very, very best players really do understand is even when a game looked hopeless, there is often a decision point, and that decision point might be as early as the Mulligans. It might be even earlier than that. You might have just brought the wrong deck to the tournament. That is a decision point as well.
Should have picked Mage.
Yeah, why not? There's a serious point. Mage actually, if it's Freeze Mage, for example, would have done very well against the Aggro Druid, but potentially would have got dumpstered by a Jade Druid. So it's actually a very, very difficult decision in that spot. So again, are your class-up pairings correct? Did you make the right read on the deck? Did Japan just out-bluff you by bringing the Aggro Druid instead of the Jade Druid? Yes, the game itself was one-sided, but just the card interactions and the things that happen in play, that's not all there is to competitive Hearthstone.
Yeah, but we can see Japan is 1-0 with Tonsoku taking the win there. Next up is going to be Aqua versus Turner. It's going to be a good old Warrior mirror match.
Yay!
And this could be one of our favorite mirror matches, which and I know one of Lorinda's favorite, which is the Warrior Quest mirror match. And, this could go on for a while, but I'll be completely honest, I think we have seen the most success come out from Pirate Warrior in global games as well. So it wouldn't surprise me too much if at least one of these players has brought Pirate Warrior.
It wouldn't. Just looking at the lineup that was with it, there was a Druid and a Hunter that were turned down. It makes sense. Hunter, actually, surprisingly, after being the bane of Control Warrior's existence in the past, is actually not that strong against Taunt Warrior these days. So avoiding your Hunter because you don't want to run it into a potential Taunt Warrior makes a lot of sense. The Druid, on the other hand, though, is almost the inverse. The Druid probably didn't want to run into the Hunter coming up from the other side. So by process of elimination, we ended up with Warrior Mirrors, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, definitely. When we see the deck lists, it's going to be really interesting to see how this one pans out. Some extra information about the players, though. Aqua 6 casual 16 top 100 legend finishes. And that is a lot. Yes, TJ. That's actually pretty good. 16 top 100.
Thanks for the clarification, T.
We didn't realize. We didn't realize. But yeah, Aqua has a lot of performance basically on ladder and you know, like sort of the general way to play Hearthstone in terms of just finishing high legend, playing some online cups. But this is going to be great for him in terms of, you know, to stand beside B787, Gundam Flame, that have had huge sort of worldwide performances, and start to, you know, really put his name out there further out than the Asia Pacific region.
Yeah, he had a stellar Swiss record in the APAC playoffs as well that we recently got finished with. Didn't quite make the cut in the end, but had a solid performance nonetheless. And something that we haven't mentioned about the Italian team just yet, you know, we mentioned they've all got this this grinder pedigree behind them, the hard work paying off for them in terms of the amount of points they've gathered, but they also all just are affiliates on the same team, which means more perhaps than any other country in this tournament, they are used to working together, to communicating, collaborating ideas on deck lists, coming up with strategies for tournaments. So that is potentially something that can work to their advantage, but did not as of yet against Japan, because it definitely felt like they missed the reads there in game one, and Japan definitely got the better of the mind games.
Yeah, I agree. It's really rough. It definitely helps that they're just teammates on and off HGG, which is definitely a bonus. But yeah, I think they've got to just think about that first game and say, well, sometimes Aggro Druid just does that, you know, like has a really strong start, stays just ahead enough to stay ahead, and then Savage Roar things happen, which is just the way the deck is actually built to work. We even saw Fledgling in the list, which is awesome. If that gets innovated out, that can just be game almost all the time. It's kind of that crazy, but that didn't happen for this game. Looks like the players might be ready for this Warrior Mirror match. We see one, we see two. Let's get cozy. It's going to be a Quest Warrior Mirror, although I've heard some people say this is not as simple as who gets the first Sulfuras. Do you agree?
Well, we saw some evidence to that effect at DreamHack Austin, where Reynad in particular did make a couple of from-behind comebacks where he lost the race to Sulfuras, was behind in the Taunt Minion count, but some of the extra tools that he had, like Battle Rage, for example, just helped him really get to out-resource his opponents in the late game, and he just picked up the right tools at the right times in the later stages to really swing the board state back. I still 100% stand by the fact that the person who just rushes to Sulfuras first is, in theory, massively favored in this matchup.
It's consistency, right?
When you say things like that in Hearthstone, there are no definitive general rules that apply to every situation. So, you know, if we were to say here, yeah, if you get to Sulfuras first, you're massively favored, and then you get to Sulfuras first and you lose, well, we still have our bases covered, but you know, there's still that 10-20% chance that the opponent has to come from behind in that spot, but it's still a massive focal point of the matchup.
Yeah, and looking at the opening hands, it looks like Italy have actually got a bit more of the better side of it here. Fireplume's Heart, no doubt, going to be played on one because he chose to keep it. So they probably actually had a reasonable read that it was, in fact, the mirror match and not Pirate Warrior.
So I've thought about this, and I think in the Warrior Mirror sight unseen, you 100% keep the quest. Because you have a very good chance of beating Pirate Warrior even if you do. It's just a strong matchup. If you throw it away in the mirror, you're just done. So I don't think it makes any sense ever, unless you have an absolute 100% Pirate Warrior soul read, to throw the quest away.
Yeah, but with the Stonehill Defender and the Bloodhoof Brave going for 3 and 4, Italy are looking pretty good just to be able to get that early curve going and potentially just prot the quest way before Japan here. We can see 0 taunts out in Japan's hand at the moment, but with a shield block, Fire War Axe, and the coin as well makes it much more likely that the taunts they do draw, they can actually either play or they can just draw into them faster, such as Daihon actually.
Yeah, and Japan,
good timing.
Japan and Aqua just not quite getting there. Fiery War Axe is available on 2.
Face.
Just for a little bit of tempo. Slap him in the face. Play around that shield slam. No, I don't think that's likely.
Pretend you're playing the Quest Pirate Warrior list. You know, you've seen that, right?
Because that's a thing, yeah.
Corsairs.
Yeah, get them.
Yeah, they're good. Anyway, back to the real world of Hearthstone, which is a weird sentence in itself. Stonehill gives another Bloodhoof Brave, which I think I actually do like here. I'm a big fan of Public Defender. I feel like we talk about this card every single time we cast this match.
You talk about this card every time we cast this match.
And then you reply. So it's a we're a team, Saul. Come on. But in this instance, I feel like just jamming turn 4 Bloodhoof Brave, turn 5 Bloodhoof Brave is very strong. 6 health, very awkward to deal with, and also it just means you kind of continue to curve. It gives you more time to draw into potentially high mana taunts.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong in theory with taking cheap taunts in this matchup and trying to rush Sulfuras, like we said. I'm deliberately not going to say the name now. But the point is, there's nothing to do on 5 for Italy right now. So if he took the cheaper taunt, he would probably use his entire turn 5 to play it anyway. So he might as well just take the biggest thing that he can play on 5 and fill out his curve that way.
Curate is going to go into the hand for Japan, which is going to help out later on in terms of draw, but still nothing worthwhile this turn. Shield block just going to be used to cycle and try and dig into something a bit more impactful, but more than likely Aqua's going to go for the coin hatchling next turn.
Definitely looking that way. Curator in hand for Aqua is a very, very big deal. I've been looking a lot, actually, at opening hand win rate stats, and Curator is actually one of the most surprising cards. Not just in Taunt Warrior, but in the entire game. It actually has a very, very high win rate in the opening hand for Taunt Warrior. Just purely because it just pulls you all the taunts that you need to finish the quest. And that is one of the tools that we saw, I think, Reynad make good use of, is that when it got down to the later game where he was in a Taunt Warrior mirror and the hands were both exhausted from each side, he was hitting that Curator and suddenly there's a Direhorn Hatchling and a Primordial Drake in his hand and he's just got all the gas to push forward.
Yeah, I think that's the important part. With this this new Quest Warrior, it means that you actually don't run as much card draw, and you find yourself burnt out really quick, especially in the mirror when your opponent is using the Rag Hero power to actually just kill off every single minion you play anyway, so you don't really get any sustainability from the board. So as you said, the Curator drawing you like 2 additional taunts is actually fantastic. So we'll see if it comes into play for Japan, if they can hold on long enough. There isn't actually too much power on the board for Italy, and that's just the way this deck kind of works.
Yes.
The taunts are never actually that strong when you look at, you know, sure, Bloodhoof Brave, like when it's procced, is 5 attack, but in general, the Drakes are normally the most powerful taunts that get played onto the board, so they're never going to press you down too quickly. So it's very, very likely that, you know, Aqua has a chance to flick this one a little bit back in his favor with this Curate here.
Italy can really start to get some pressure going here if they would like to, though. Bloodhoof and Whirlwind could pick up the nice value trade on the Direhorn Hatchling, 5 power from the Bloodhoof going into the remaining 5 health of the Direhorn, and he'd have a second 5/5 Bloodhoof on the board, but he's chilling with that Sleep with the Fishes in his hand, as well as a Dirty Rat and a Brawl, so he's looking to keep together his AoE effects for the crucial proceedings later in the game. The way Italy are probably looking at this matchup right now is, okay, we're a long way ahead in the taunt count, and, you know, if we can just get to the spot where we hit our quest first, we suddenly then have 2 good board clears available, which is guaranteeing our Sulfuras shots are going where we want them. And they're just going to play out through the turns in that manner, and it's on Aqua and Japan to play catch-up from this spot.
Yeah, also 5 mana taunt, right?
Yeah.
Normally the way it works. So
TFTA, right?
Yeah. Second Brawl being picked up for Turner means that they have a lot of options, because a lot of the way this works is you build up to Sulfuras, then you have a Brawl Sulfuras hero power turn.
Yes.
To try and clear off whatever's left, if anything, on the enemy side of the board. So having 2 Brawls available means you can use them a little bit more loosely, maybe use one a bit earlier if required.
Dirty Rat is gonna pull the only minion in hand, which is Curator, and it's a huge body to pull on the board for free for your opponent, but that is a big win for Italy, because that is -2 taunts, essentially, to your opponent's hand.
Yeah, kind of -3, because the Curator doesn't count as a taunt when it's pulled from the Rat as well.
Totally right, yeah.
So it's actually, it's a double whammy. Normally when you pull a taunt out with Rat in this mirror, you're like, great, -1 that they could have played.
Right, absolutely.
With Curator as well, it's like, okay, you hit the mother load. Luckily for Aqua, you can just pick up a Bloodhoof Brave this turn, which means that you can play something. But at what point do you have to really start to worry about this board? The mirror feels so weird. Play minions, don't do anything with them.
Yep.
Wait till you brawl Sulfuras.
Yep.
Go. Then I feel like the game begins.
Yeah, it's just the nature of taunt minions. You know, taunt minions can be used to do a couple of awkward things. You know, the first is just be a defensive wall, so those just kind of cancel each other out. The second is that you can kind of play combat tricks with taunt minions, where you force your opponent to attack into specific places by hiding, you know, high attack, low health minions behind taunts. Well, you can't do that in this matchup because every damn thing has taunt on it. So you just get into these weird situations with a bunch of low attack, high health minions that can't really do any significant damage to each other. So you just end up with this weird board stalemate where both players just almost ignore each other and just march towards completing their own quest on their own terms.
Yeah, and that's going to be number 3 for Japan. But look at how weird and how bad this board state kind of looks for Japan, actually. They have 4 taunts on the board, 4 relatively large taunts as well. only 3 activated on Sulfuras, and no more minions in hand.
Yep.
Like, this is a little bit rough. And it looks like Aqua and Japan have decided to go against the grain a little bit here and start clearing off some of this board. They don't go in on the Ali Armorsmith because that's just going to gain turn and more armor, the more attacks in, the more damage it does. But other than that, they've actually tried to clear up this board because they realize they have the bigger minions overall.
Yes, and Italy's hand has now just run dry just a little bit, but the one thing they have going for them is, thank you, good timing. As I was about to say, I hope I've kept track correctly. They are 2 ahead on the taunt count, so this is going to be a race now as to who can pick up those taunt minions. Italy have several things going for them. One is that advantage on the count already. Secondly, they still have their Curator available to draw, which will just complete the quest for them automatically over a couple of turns.
Also, these trades has opened up this sleep with the fishes as well to get a lot of value here, along with the trades he already has on board. This can clear up a hell of a lot of minions here. The Stonehill going into the Curator very easily. The Armorsmiths clashing to clear them up now, and now suddenly Turner's going to be more ahead on armor, at least I would say even on board, because of the nature of, yeah, Bluetooth gets extra attack, but the Ali Armorsmith gains extra health, so kind of even. And they have the backup plan with the Brawls and the Execute now, and the Whirlwind, so a lot of options there for Italy if they can finish this quest quickly. Both players kind of drawing a little bit dead on the old taunt count.
Yes, we've seen the board stalemate take place for the last few turns where both teams just developed and didn't really have good ways to interact with each other. Now we're seeing the hands have run dry of minions, and now it's just a complete hand stalemate because there is just a bunch of removal in both hands with no targets.
Yeah, a little bit ropey here, but how would you feel about a Whirlwind Execute and just start getting him? Because there'll be 0 taunts on the board. You can start just pressuring damage to face, remove that armor, so Shield Slam becomes less of a worry, and then just start pushing, because there is, other than armor up past, there is very little else that can be done. They could just be Execute and not bother with the Whirlwind, which is reasonable, but I feel like you kind of have the sneaky option to just whip in at least 5 damage, and I would like to take it at this point because the hand is so dead.
He's actually going to go with a third option, which is Sleep with the Fishes. I was going to say I don't think the Whirlwind gets used here because with double sleep in hand, you just then leave yourself without an activator. Execute can definitely hit some much higher value targets, and Execute is a very useful card for combat manipulation in the Sulfuras turns, where you want to maximize your chance of hitting a specific target, be it a big minion or face or whatever it is. So I'm not surprised to see the Whirlwind not used. Sleep with the Fishes is just a nice solution with 2 in hand. Japan clearly felt getting one of them out of hand was more beneficial than using their only Execute.
Yeah, and this still asks the question to Italy, right? Like, are you going to deal with this Bluetooth? Are you going to put a minion up? Most taunts actually just died to the Bluetooth anyway. Slamming that shield block into an Execute. Both players have just forgot to put enough taunts in the deck to finish the quest. This is looking awkward and embarrassing, as we'll see what Italy can draw it into. Stonehill Defender, the opposite of the draw from Japan in terms of how valuable this card is. Take any taunt, you can play this turn, unless...
Where are we going with this, Raven?
Well, Soggoth is just a good card, right? The problem is, though, that the normal way that the game develops is the Brawl turn.
Yes.
So Soggoth still dies to Brawl.
Yeah.
Could just play Bluetooth this turn, get him down. I think it's still 1 off if he plays Bluetooth.
No, this will be number 7 if it gets played.
Oh, it will.
Yeah.
It will, of course. Okay, Bluetooth, yeah. Actually, no. Frostwolf Grunt, so you can equip the Sulfuras.
Yeah, I had a quick look at that. The problem would be that you are 1 mana short of equipping and firing the hero power. I think if you can do that, you absolutely do that. It's like, do you want to...
I just want to do it because you pick Frostwolf Grunt.
Right, but like in real terms, like, do you want a 2/6 or do you want a 2/2 that deals 8 damage as a battle cry, essentially,
Exactly.
right? Like, you're taking that thing, so... but since he didn't have the mana available afterwards to fire off the hero power as well, just a Bloodhoof just makes perfect sense. Sulfuras is now ready and waiting in hand, and Aqua is just a long way behind for Team Japan, still only sitting at 3. And as I said, Reynad has kind of, broken the meta and managed to win some games from behind in this matchup.
This far behind?
Yeah. Don't see this one looking too likely unless Japan is going to draw absolutely perfectly from this position.
Well, this is as good as the Dirty Rat's ever going to be at this instance in the game. The quest is already procced, so now you're just playing a 2-mana 2/6 taunt that helps your own quest. So this is okay for Japan, but we know Sulfuras is just going to clean this up along with the Bluetooth Brave. Hero power can just slam straight to face for 8. And then now as you ood quite reasonably, Acolyte of Pain is going to mean that Turner and Team Italy are going to be in a good position to continue drawing more cards next turn.
It fits very nicely right now if you want to. You can Acolyte and Whirlwind to enrage your Bloodhoof, trade the Bloodhoof through the 5 health of the Dirty Rat, still have enough mana left over to equip Sulfuras and get the guaranteed face hero power, so...
What are your thoughts on so something that I think about a little bit is, with Sulfuras, do you actually, before you even do all that, just press hero power and see if it hits the rat? Because then you save more health on the taunt, do you know what I mean? Because there's a lot of times where the 8 damage from the hero power doesn't actually... You don't need the whole 8 to kill a minion that's on the board. You could kill it with more minions, but you do actually save some yourself by keeping the minions alive.
I think in a regular situation, that is very much the case. You want the hero power to do the minion work for you so you can preserve your minions. The reason I liked the Acolyte play, and what Italy did here is kind of the same thing, just without using the Whirlwind, is that you have the Bloodhoof on board anyway. So just by nature of trading, you're representing so much extra power. Yeah. Not only do you hit 8 to face instead of just these low attack taunt minions connecting to face, you also then enrage your Bloodhoof for the next turn and threaten huge amounts of damage on the follow-up.
And also they're so far ahead, right?
I'm a little bit worried about this Acolyte getting played here without the Whirlwind being used. He chose...
it's fine, it'll live.
He chose 2 armor preemptively before equipping Sulfuras over playing the Whirlwind here for a guaranteed card draw. And I think you have to expect from your opponent, with how dead the left-hand side of their hand has been for this entire game, that Brawl is one of those cards, and you do not really want your Acolyte to die there. But, I mean, potentially, Italy can just be looking at this game and saying, you know what, like, I'm happy just firing 8 every turn, I don't particularly need cards, but now they're going to revert to that plan anyway, cycle the Whirlwind to try and pick up some pressure. Don't get it, though.
Now you can sleep with the fishes, draw another one.
You can.
It's fine.
You have 2 Brawls. I mean, it's not
you
like...
You also just have the reg hero power, and they're
like
light years away from it.
Right, yeah.
Please. Sleep with the fishes.
Raven wants to see it so badly.
I mean, I actually would. You've got 5 mana, you can play almost any card you draw.
That's not entirely true. There are Primordial Drakes, Curator still left in
almost.
There. I mean, I'm aware, but you know, there's a good chunk of the proactive things that you will be wanting to hit, i.e. minions that can pressurize.
Yeah.
A good percentage of those cards that you're actually looking to hit immediately are unplayable because they're most of the expensive taunts that are left in your deck.
Another Dirty Rat from Aqua is going to be not pulling, should I say, a minion from the hand for Turner. So he's going to get away with it again. It's just a 2/6 taunt. We get that armor up down. Clear off the Acolyte as well, so no more card draws available. Could have played around it with the Sleep with the Fishes, but chose not to. Just saying. And yeah, you know, even at this point where it looks like, okay, can Japan do it? Probably not. Is still my answer, unfortunately, is the more and more these dead draws have been happening throughout this game, the more and more I'm thinking, well, then there must just be taunts left in the deck. You know, there must just be minions at this point. We've seen both Brawls in hand, both Executes, both Sleep with the Fishes, Whirlwind, you know. What else is, I think even Fire War Axe as well is equipped now. What else is even left that isn't a minion in this deck?
It's a very good question. Aqua here really just taking time to represent some cards in hand that Italy might be forced to think about, and also just plan out how they're getting a game plan together to try and win this game over the next few turns. Tar Creeper is about the lowest pressure taunt you could have possibly drawn from the deck. Stonehill Defenders, I believe, are both gone. They've contributed enormously to Italy completing this quest. So Tar Creeper is a minion, but it's about the most innocuous minion that Italy could have drawn here.
Yep, importantly though, it is something just to drop onto the board. If Japan can get the hero power off the quest done and get the hero power, that means that, yeah, you know, it might hit Tar Creeper. Great, there's 8 damage difference.
Yeah.
8 damage saved overall, so not too bad. It's better than nothing, and nothing is what pretty much both these players have been drawing for a good portion of this game as well. So any minion's a good minion at this point, and all this stemming all the way back to the Dirty Rat and to the Curator. I wonder how different this game would look.
Oh, enormously.
If the Curator, like, even to the extent where, like, even though Italy were reasonably quick with their taunts, I actually think Japan would still be good because they would guarantee draw a Drake, which is I think for me the most important part. You just always draw a Drake, or some lists that are playing Deathwing,
Yeah.
like messing around with that.
They played a Direhorn Hatchling before that Curator would have come down as well, so there was a chance that the
They would've got the
Matriarch
6/9.
could have come out and had a 5-mana 6/9 available as well, so yeah. Could have been very different. You would have to say, of course, Italy have been stacked with a handful of removal the whole time, so it's not like board pressure would have flooded them, but of course the big difference is that Aqua and Japan would very much be swinging their own Sulfuras by now.
Yeah, it would be a huge one. Bloodtooth Brave is, again, something, but a lot of the time dudes just aren't enough at this point. Like, where do you even decide to make the push to win the game here? Because it's so hard. Like, you play Bloodtooth there, you know, +1 onto my my quest, fantastic. Just gets cleared next turn, and then you're always that one step. And in this case, feels more like 2 to 3 steps just behind your opponent here.
Yeah. Again, just continuing to draw air. Slam at least is going to recycle, but still a lot of huge imposing minions left in the deck from Turner, and Italy have chosen as well to just roll back a little bit, because on the previous turn there was a Dirty Rat on the board, 2/6 taunt. They could have chosen to take a guaranteed 8 damage to face again just by pushing through that with the War Axe and Sleep with the Fishes even. Didn't have to use the Execute. So they have decided just to slow play just a little bit, and if they continue to draw air, they might have just let up the pressure enough for Japan to get a foothold. That's not to say they're not still in a very, very favorable position, because just to start with, Japan still have to pick up taunt minion number 7 before any of this can come to reality.
Yeah, and at this point, a lot of the taunt minions are actually the expensive ones as well. So being able to taunt Sulfuras hero power, as we mentioned earlier for Italy, actually gets quite difficult. It's going to be a brawl from Italy, so just remove any, or at least try, remove any potential problems here. The Bloodtooth Brave lives, so kind of worst case scenario there.
Yeah, this is fine though, just hero power, take your 50-50, 8 to face is perfectly reasonable. You're not too worried about this 5-4 connecting with your face. You're at 47 total health right now. But Stonehill going to complete the quest for Japan just as it did for Italy. You're going to wait for the Sulfurious animation to take place. And hey, look, a spare Curator.
Not bad when you kind of lost your first one.
Yeah.
I think you still want to pick it up here.
I think so too.
The other two don't really scream, value or even just, reliable enough. If one was, for example, just anything that's going to be more resistant to a hero power, then I'd probably go for it. But Curator just drawing more cards is often going to do enough work to give them a chance. And, there is a chance at this point. There is only Tar Creeper. There's another Brawl. Execute Sleep with the Fishes in Italy's hand. But is that going to be enough? This draw is going to be very, very important. Bloodtooth Brave, not bad.
Yeah, but that Curator from Japan could end up being that glimmer of light that they needed, that crack in the window that they can gape wide open and jump through and find a way back into this matchup, because that is going to give them the resource advantage. It's only been these small, low-pressure taunts been picked up for Italy since Sulfuras has been activated. And as I mentioned, this gives them the chance to not only get that Primordial Drake, which is a huge threat, but also a potential 5-mana 6/9 as well, which can really actually represent a lot of pressure on its own and resists a Die Insect hero power.
Yeah, which is absolutely huge. Just anything that survives is insane. It asks an additional question of their opponent as to whether they have a Whirlwind, Sleep with the Fishes, just anything to be able to get rid of it. And it's just a lot of damage. It's nearly a rag hero power in itself in terms of its attack. So my Execute's going to come down before the hero power. So Italy managing to clear off the board now. Still has the Bloodtooth Brave available. Tar Creeper for next turn to go a little bit wider. But again, this is actually, Italy's running really, really dry on the hand now.
Choosing not to swing again, there's definitely been a conscious decision from Italy in this matchup to not, go for the jugular as much as they could have done. They really could have forced through a lot more damage over the last few turns in this position. And it's Japan now who are actually, from a losing position, starting to make the more aggressive push. They're finding these turns every turn that are just making the hero power connect to face. There was 47, we called it out just a couple of turns ago. Now all the way down to 22. And this is off the back of Japan picking up Sulfuras, realizing that they had a lot of catch-up work to do, and just going as fast as they possibly could from that position.
Yeah, this is absolutely huge. Finally a Primordial Drake in the hand for Italy, but It actually just doesn't do anything this turn. It tickles the Aqua's Drake, but that's about it. And it makes the hero power unable to be played, and suddenly Italy are on 18 health, only 1 health difference. They do have a weapon equipped, they do have the Tark Reaper, now with the hero power is going to help put them to 9, but 9, very importantly, is not 8, so there is a chance that he can live through 1 more direct face hit.
And a very relevant point, because they chose to turn down the swing at face on the previous turn, which would have put them at 6, which is in fact less than 8, and then when taunt minions come down this turn, that War Axe would not need to connect to face. It's just hero power needs to hit face. You have an out to win the game for the rest of the game from that position.
Yeah, now there's no, depending on what's drawn, there's no 50-50 out here. If it goes face, it's probably reasonable for Aqua, as this opens up a chance at him getting lethal himself. Primordial Drakes are going to get in the way of that. It's getting very, very, very close, considering that we thought this was wrapped up for Italy very early on.
It is. Minion gets taken down here, so Italy now do just have to continue to develop minions themselves. Now the weapon swing is going to come through. I think they identified the situation there. There was perhaps potential for them to identify it just a turn or 2 ago, give themselves an out to win the game just a little bit earlier, and now 2 minions get drawn for Aqua, which can minimize the chances of the face hit, but if 2 minions get played, no hero power gets played, and does that progress you towards a win condition this turn?
It's a tough one, isn't it? I think I would go for the Acolyte, just to try and stay ahead. It will give you least chance for the direct kill. It's definitely tough. Or do you think you just have to go for it? Go for the hero power this turn, because either way, if the hero power hits your face, yeah, you lose. If the hero power hits the Curator, Italy still need extra damage to be able to kill you off, and then you might get the hero power to win the following turn.
Right.
Very, very, very tricky here.
I'm struggling to see a line where you win the game without hero powering twice over the next 2 turns, right? Like this just gives you an out. Even if you hero powered and you hit the minion, then potentially you have a chance. If your minion gets hit, you're back in the same spot. You just continue to take these hero power trades. But without hero powering that turn, I just don't see a way it was going to happen. They did hit face, which means Primordial Drake is going to come through to finish the job. Die Insect is going to get it done, but there was only in the end 1 turn in it, despite Italy having the quest for, 4 turns, 5 turns before Japan even got there, which, again, goes to show that perhaps we are overselling how much of an advantage being first to finish the quest in that matchup gives you. It undoubtedly gives you an advantage, but maybe we are overselling it in terms of just how much.
Yeah, it was a really crazy game, actually. I genuinely thought Japan had just ended that was losing that very, very quickly, as Turner for Team Italy actually just got ahead so fast and just negated the Curator. I think that was the big deal. Curator helped them out in the late game when they got another one from Stonehill, but now we're going to be moving on as these teams do even it up against each other 1-1. It's going to be Innovan on the Shaman, not the Rogue, versus B787 on the Mage. Oh, I knew I was a fan of B7. If this is the Mage deck, I think it will be. I've been playing a lot of this bad boy.
Yeah, I mean, he actually innovated a somewhat new build of the Gunter Mage, the Discover Mage, the whatever we want to call it. It seems to have a new name every single day that I hear casters and players talking
Raven
about.
Mage.
Sure. But B787 Mage, in this case, he brought Elise into it, I believe, as well as a Volcanic Potion. Was using it to push very, very high legend on the Asia server. And as I mentioned, I believe he actually finished rank 2 legend with it at the end of the season, which is no small accomplishment.
Yeah, the Elise is definitely an interesting choice, because a lot of the time, with my experience with the deck, it's very, you get to the point where, not against aggro decks, but against sort of, mid-range control decks, you actually just burn them out in the end. You have so much damage in the deck, it's kind of incredible. And the Elise pack is potentially gives you a draw that isn't burn, which confuses me a little bit, but it does depend on what you're expecting to face. If you're going to go for the, the late control matchups, obviously an extra 5 cards that are high value most of the time is pretty reasonable.
And you can see some of the player facts. B787 we have already talked about a lot. His hero, Matson, is the man that gives him this eternal love for control decks, saying that he would rather lose with control than bring aggro and win. But in a team environment, how much do personal biases like that get overruled by your team insisting that you bring the best stuff? He's got away with it on this occasion because one of his favorite decks that he's been playing in the Mage is turning out to be quite powerful. Again, let's remember that Japan have given us one bait and switch so far, so there could be something out of left field from B787 here as well. But Innovan, from his same kind of story, massive amount of points, top 100 legend all 3 months so far in 2017, and well, favorite Italian food is pizza. Hardly the most surprising fact that I have heard.
No, but it gets full respect from me. I could also eat pizza every single day, and I do, which isn't recommended for all you people at home, but not too healthy, but definitely tasty indeed. But yeah, both these players, it's going to be cool to see what we come up against here, because again, B787 has been playing a lot of this mage deck. It would be very expected for him to bring it.
Exactly.
But I just wonder if there is a chance at a switch. Probably not, because B787 just plays control all the time.
Right.
Like, I can't imagine him pulling out aggro mage or something, like random like that. I really can't. He wouldn't know what to do with it. He'd be like, but what is face? It's like, how do I aim at the minions? So the random minions just go face. He won't get it at all. And
Be like a duckling with a lawnmower.
is that even a phrase?
No, I just made it up. A duckling would have no idea what to do with a lawnmower. It works.
Maybe it would.
Yeah. We can find out. Experiment.
I was going to say, until someone's tried it, maybe they know exactly
the
what
scientific method, the way that we get everything done. But yeah, I agree. But I do want to continue on the point of just Japan can always convince him to play something that he doesn't want to play, right? We've seen this conflict come from, let's say, George C. and Jackie Chan on Team UK, where Jackie Chan just wants to have fun, he wants to play casual decks. George C. says that he's had to talk him out of one or two things. Again, you're in it for the team. So you, if you are being a team player, have to put aside any personal biases that you might have and just continue to go along with what the general consensus of the team is. It turns out the general consensus of the team is just to let B787 play the mage deck that he wants.
Can't argue with that, as this does very much look like his mage deck. And it's going to be awesome to see, because the whole idea behind this deck, I feel, is that it's flexible. You have completely different play styles depending on what you're against, and you can do. It's not like, you say Quest Warrior. Well, almost in every single matchup, the play style is play taunts, defend yourself, and then win in the late game. Whereas this mage can be highly aggressive if it wants to, with some early burn, Mana Worm, Medivh's Valor you can see in hand there. And with cards like Glyph, Cabal Courier, you can actually just almost alter the deck to do whatever you need it to do. So it's going to be very interesting, especially with 2 Glyphs in hand now as we start this game number 3 of Japan versus Italy. It'll be very interesting how these Glyphs come into play.
Yep, also going to be interesting to see exactly where this clearly Jade Druid deck is evolving. Thing from Below being picked up is perhaps an indicator of the Spirit Echo inclusion. It's fairly standard these days when you're seeing Jade Shaman. Jade Shaman was a deck that really benefited from Bran more than Druid did, because you just don't have as many Jade effects in your deck, so Bran was needed to just push them up to those game-winning levels. And of course, with that gone, Spirit Echo now allows you to recycle Jade effects in the same kind of way, but also is a fantastic card to go with Thing from Below when it gets discounted, and perhaps very importantly in this matchup, a great card to drop on your heal minions, so that once the boards get cleared, which the mage is going to have to do eventually, they can't just leave these minions sticking around hitting them in the face every turn, you then recycle heal effects over and over again to pull yourself out of range of those 2 to 3 turn burn setups.
Yeah, and it's going to be a little bit scary as well, because we saw from Innovan's opening hand, or the opening the mulligan, was that Bloodlust is in the deck as well. Okay. So Bloodlust can just kind of come out of nowhere a lot of the time. I think no matter how much you try and think about it, it actually does just catch most people off guard. When the deck lists are hidden, it could be any Shaman list, you're like, oh, but what if he has Bloodlust? A lot of the time you can't even afford to play around that outcome if you have no idea it's in the deck. Do you see the coin hero power coming out there from Team Italy? So that's going to give B787 and Team Japan quite a nod as to what the deck looks like. It probably has Things from Below, and one's probably in hand.
Yeah, you can almost actually work out your opponent's exact curve from that play. You can say, okay, coin totem into 3-drop into Thing from Below. Yeah. That's what they want to do, because otherwise coining the totem doesn't actually get you anywhere. You could just use the coin on the later turn when you bring your Thing from Below down, or when you want to play a 4-drop, for example. But this curve right here is one of the few that really makes any sense. And now picking up the second Thing from Below, they're getting instantly rewarded for this totem-heavy start.
Yeah, definitely crazy to see this kind of like how much mid-range power there is coming out from Team Italy here. We did see B787 use the first glyph and actually get an Arcane Intellect, which is pretty reasonable. This early in the game, the glyphs are always a bit harder to choose because you kind of need to... It's like almost like the Finley hero power before he rotated out, right? If you play it on one, a lot of the time you need to just make that snap decision as to how you want the game plan to go. Whereas with Glyph, there's a bit more options, and going for just a 1-mana Arcane Intellect is just pretty good no matter what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, Glyph is a mage card that we will probably see in every single mage deck for at least the first wave of this expansion until the next expansion hits, or the first wave of Year of the Mammoth, I should say. And I think Arcane Intellect, regardless of which deck you are playing,
it's just good.
Be it Freeze Mage, be it the Discover Mage, be it even an Aggro Mage, your Arcane Intellect is just a very, very useful card to have in any situation in any deck. So it's one of the most universally picked cards, unless you need a specific answer for the situation that you are facing, which is the great strength of Discover, to be able to react flexibly to those kind of spots. Arcane Intellect is just an evergreen card that is never going to let you down too much.
Right, it's just good, whereas it even has a lot of taunt. I imagine there is a second Tar Creeper in this deck as well, so double Tar Creeper potentially and double Hot Spring Guardian. It's definitely built to not get run over quickly.
It is, but Jinyus as well are going to be the big talking point, because as you mentioned, there becomes points with this mage where you just start burning and hope that you get there. So Hot Spring Guardians are going to be some small heals. The Jinyus are not automatic inclusions in these decks anymore now that Hot Spring is around. So if they're in there as well, then Innovan might just be able to find enough turns with the small incremental heals. If they're not, then maybe B7's burn can get there.
Yeah, especially because as we discussed, we've seen one glyph go for Arcane Intellect. Because a lot of the time, even if you know you're against a heavy healing deck, well, Alexstrasza's normally in the deck for a start, but also you can just glyph into the highest burn cards you can find. Pyroblast, Fireland's Portal, for example. You can just get more damage than you should ever be allowed to play in a single deck, and just keep going, keep going, keep going. And a lot of the time, as long as you don't lose the board too hard or take too much early damage, you will just win.
And there is Medivh, which is the big diversion of this deck from the classic Freeze Mage strategy. There are still some Freeze Mage holdouts, some Freeze Mage loyalists. Laughing recently tweeted that old Laughing was back with a rank 2 legend screenshot. George C still insists as well that Freeze Mage is the way to go. But this Medivh coming in, basically what it does for this deck is in the matchups previously, where Freeze Mage had to go for the Kobold OTK kind of strategy. Just delay, 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 save up a hand, Emperor it, and burn you out in one go so you can't heal. Yeah. That strategy isn't available anymore. So, burn-based mage decks need a way to beat very resilient decks who can heal out of range. So Medivh is kind of the replacement for that OTK strategy in this kind of deck, where they say, okay, if you're going to be resilient against me and gain life, I'm just going to generate a huge board at the same time that I'm generating my burn spells against you, and then just healing is not good enough anymore. You have to heal and board clear. Yeah,
I think that's the trick, isn't it? It's not so much just getting value from the weapon, it's the fact that you're burning them anyway and gaining minions, which means well, if you stop my burn, my minions hit you. If you stop my minions, I'll just keep killing you anyway. So as you said, it kind of does both jobs in one go. I actually crafted Golden Medivh the other day along with the Medivh Valets.
Good job.
And I wanted to go full roleplay with this deck, and I'm enjoying it, I'm not going to lie.
Nice. Of course, there is the alternate use of the Atiesh, which is if you are Shoop the God, you can just win a major by hitting your opponent in the face with a 1/2 weapon at the time.
I think that's the noise it makes. We did see earlier the second glyph get used while we were talking about the overall strategies for this deck.
Yep.
I did pick up the Volcanic Potion. Very good versus Shaman, just because of the hero power as a natural thing. But also just good for 1 mana to combine with a potential Flame Strike or Meteor, for example. Just a nice 1 mana deal 2 to the board is actually very, very powerful. Easy to just slip into a turn there. Cabal Courier is going to open up more options going forward, but definitely the more tricky card to use, as it gives you 1 Warlock, 1 Priest, 1 Mage option. Let's see what comes out here for B7. Actually, yeah, I think the other 2 cards are so low impact that Tunneler just does the same kind of thing again, and it discovers a spell from Mage when you have it in your Mage list. So it means that you can actually just get Fireball. Yeah, you take 4 damage. You don't care if you're just going to kill him though.
Yeah. As a general rule, for those of you who aren't quite sure on which cards are going to generate which classes when you get them out of classes, if it's a purely random effect, like Lyra, for example, then it tends to stick to the class that it's from, whereas if it's a discover effect, then it tends to be with the class that you are with. There are some exceptions to that, though, like, for example, Hydrologist.
Yeah, Finders Keepers.
Yes.
As well. Yeah. Oh, Hearthstone.
Fun.
You keep us on our toes. Aya, though, seems to be a reasonably good drop on this turn. Not too much minion pressure coming out from B787. It can start to rack up those Jades, but Innovan goes against it and wants to actually just not let this value trade happen into the Tar Creeper. It does seem a little bit slower, but with Mana Worm and a Firefly, it means that you can fill out this curve quite well and start to continue to draw into the higher value cards in the deck. You know, we've not seen Spirits, not seen Jade Lightning, you know, anything to actually the Aya has a bigger impact on once it's played. Speaking of which, Jade Lightning.
So Firelands is available, but no great target for it. So yeah, I was just going to say it does look like a Tunneler turn here, just trying to pick up some value. And follow up with Medivh next turn, so he might even just be looking for a potential high value card here. Doesn't really get offered any of them though. AI seems reasonable again, as we've mentioned, but there's already one in hand and there are hand size concerns. So Forbidden Flame does also just address the board right now if he wants to go that way.
Yeah, and I think like even potentially getting rid of the 2 Frostbolts this turn could be okay, even though the Tar Creeper's one of those weird minions that when do you ever actually try and kill it? Because it's not doing much to you, but it is still something on the board that your minions have to go through. But also the Forbidden Flame with the Tunneler means it B7 takes 0 health, because that's the cost of the mana.
Yeah.
So there's definitely just a consideration to say, well, I can get use out of this card, and it does 0 damage to me. If I took anything else, I'm taking more self-damage. But I do like the Medivh next turn. I think a lot of the times in this deck that you actually just slam Medivh on 8 as long as you're not directly dead, because then the weapon value kind of like regenerates the issue of playing an 8-mana 7/7 and doing nothing that turn.
Aya going to come down just for pressure here. The other thing worth mentioning about Forbidden Flame as well, you know, you mentioned 0 damage because the card costs 0. It also summons a Wisp from Medivh, no matter how much mana you actually spend with it.
Or a Tiny Fin.
No, Tiny Fin rotated.
Did it?
Yeah.
I've been playing too much Wild recently.
Raven's Wild Alarm, if you aren't familiar with that.
Well, there it is. Brought to you by Sottle.
Yep.
So, nice. Meteor is going to be drawn, though, for B7. One of my favorite cards from the new expansion. It's just awesome.
It's just glorious.
Just land a Meteor on someone.
Yeah.
When you know, no one can tell me they've not been through life and not wanted to drop a Meteor in someone at some point, let's be honest. And in Hearthstone, you can do that every single game.
I have that feeling right now.
Yeah, Lorinda is in the studio with us today, so you know, he's going to be joining us a little bit later for some of the games. But getting back into this one, this JJ, I feel like Innovan hasn't really got off to it anywhere near quick enough start here.
No.
He's had defensive options. We see 2 Hot Spring Guardians still in hand from like turn 3 or 4, I think they were both there. The Tar Creeper now, Tar Creeper number 2 in hand. You cannot really be defensive against this mage list because when you're not generating a board or putting on pressure, you just give the, you know, like for example B7 the time to acquire so much damage, so much value. Now Atiesh combined with a Firelands Port is going to be absolutely insane. One of the best combination of cards you can do.
Yeah, and as more and more cards get drawn here, it's becoming more and more likely that this isn't the very, very resilient Spirit Echo list. It's more along the lines of an Elemental Jade hybrid that we saw being played very early on, which means holding on to those Hot Spring Guardians from Innovan actually makes a great deal of sense because he's not under any threat of death anytime soon. They're relatively cheap elemental activators for one, but secondly, you know, any healing that you drop before your opponent potentially Alexstraszes you is just wasted healing in the long run.
Yeah, I think it's more and more likely that Bloodlust is the way this deck wins more often than not in most matchups. Not against highly aggressive decks, of course, but we did see the Bloodlust earlier, and you can see just the nature of the board here. Firefly into, you know, the Flame Elemental. You know, the Hot Spring Guardians are cheap enough to just slam down 2 of them in a turn. You can actually build up a board very, very easily, and even the low attack minions with Bloodlust suddenly change anything. There goes the Meteor. Boom. And a Black Knight. If only its effect was constant and just killed taunts left, right, and center.
Why is that Tar Creeper still alive? Come on, game.
One of the tricky things to manage, actually, with Medivh is sometimes you have to use cheap spells when Atiesh is equipped.
Yes.
But there are moments where it's actually beneficial to not have a good trade, as you saw them with the Frostbolt, and wait and actually just have a worse turn then to have a bigger blowout turn with a potentially bigger minion later. Say if you need to buy a turn for Flame Strike. But it's very difficult to actually weigh off the value of the RTS weapon versus what you actually need to do on the board that turn.
And there we see there is final confirmation now that this is the an elemental deck with just the Jade sprinkling as opposed to a Jade deck with Hot Spring Guardians in it for healing. We saw the Firefly already, which was another big hint, but the Servant of Kalamos means that we are just going to be seeing pure elemental synergy. And now Japan and B787 have to start worrying about things like Kalamos Primal Lord, which can really ruin any potential burn setup that they have.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough one. Although I would say with Alex Straza in the deck, I wouldn't mind, maybe it's just maybe the style I just play, but I wouldn't mind them being very aggressive at this point. Now they know what style it is definitely, to just go very, very aggressive. If Kalamos comes out, then you do have an Alex Straza kind of backup to drop your opponent back to 15. We still haven't seen a Pyroblast yet, which, unless something's radically changed in the last day, is going to be in B7's list. More than likely, as Pyro seems to be a very, very common pick. So there's still like Silence Portal number 2, Pyroblast Fireballs left as well. There's still a lot of damage to be able to catch up on that.
Ooh,
nice.
That's a nice one. 5/7 and 3/1/1 Murlocs is the Death Rattle, I think. Not a card that has entered my radar too much so far, but yeah, now the Forbidden Flame is not quite getting there. The knife hitting the 3/1 has saved B787 the mana that he might have needed to ping this turn to take care of that. But the 4/4 on board is still just a little bit awkward. And choose to take care of it with the Forbidden Flame and the Knife Juggler trade here. And that looks like maybe what he's going for if he's going to Mana Worm.
Yeah, I like this because what this does is it defends you to actual hard-hitting minions. You know, the Juggler, although a great card in itself, not great in this deck. You do not play a lot of minions in general. So now just making the Jade die this turn means that there's no potential Jade into the nest, and then just, you know, some big AoE to help clear it off. It's actually more likely that this board gets very, very resilient at this point. Volcano drawn from Innovan, though, means he can clear this off if he really wants, but it would leave the Murlocs on the board.
It would, yeah.
You should play Hot Spring, right? Hot Spring Firefly.
I mean, you can also just hex the 5/7 and set yourself up for a Volcano later.
Actually, there's only Alex realistically left that's worth hexing, I think, in the deck. So yeah, you could quite easily do that. It would be pretty clean. Although you do like waste a lot of damage on Volcano, right?
Well, you don't even have to Volcano. You can just hex the 5/7 of Fire Ellie, and you're back in reasonable shape on the board right there. Just hexing the 5/7 Fire Ellie, the Mana Worm.
Sure, yeah. The 5/4 clears it up, which is kind of annoying, but yeah, it is. Okay, it's just going to go for the Volcano.
I don't mind this.
Get, like, the full value of the damage,
right,
I guess.
Exactly.
Nice.
Basically, the board state that he's looking at here, he's saying this is the biggest board state that this primarily spell-based mage deck is going to generate against me, so I might as well just get my maximum value out of the Volcano.
I like it.
Yeah.
And again, like, these Murlocs are 1 damage. You know, there isn't any kind of Bloodlust or you know, any minion value spells in this mage deck. But here we see the burn we were talking about. This is what I like to see. Fireball, Silence Portal, Pyroblast all on one side of the hand for B787. And already this is just adding up to lethal at this point if you can start to stack all this damage in, along with pings, of course. Which is another sort of very, very Freeze Mage-esque, where you kind of work in those extra little points of damage when you can.
Yeah, so 3 from the Murlocs is 20 plus a Fireball ping. He would be down to, what, 13 at that point? And then Firelands Portal and ping would take him down to 7 at that point, and then Pyroblast would be lethal. B787 is choosing to break up that sequence just a little bit to develop the extra board presence for himself. By that way, just pushing through extra damage over the course of those 2 turns with a minion potentially anyway.
Yeah, and this pause now because B7's hit at the direct point there. You got 1 attack in, so now Fireball Ping puts him to 10, as you mentioned, then the Pyroblast will finish it off without healing. Now B787, because he's put him at that break point, means that the 2 Murlocs can actually trade onto the board. Does get rid of the spell damage totem, which means that, you know, just makes it a little bit less likely that anything too crazy happens. And also, again, maybe mindful of Bloodlust in this list. Jade Claws, I can't remember what the Jades are up to. Is it 5/5? Or 6/6 now?
I think the one
Killed a 4-4 with the juggler, right?
the one that came out of Aya was a 3-3, and then there was a 4-4 that got killed by the juggler,
5-5.
I believe. Yes, I think the next one will be a 5. Correct.
Pretty valuable. And even has to think about what he wants to do about this Berserker, though. Because in Mage specifically, because you can just ping it, means that this guy can start stacking up a lot of damage himself.
Hex is a pretty rotten turn for him here, though, because it doesn't get that Fire Elemental into play, which is something that he's really going to want to do. At some point, he has to represent some pressure here.
I think Hex, but with the Jade Claws, is fine, though, because you're kind of developing a minion the same size. Hex kind of does the job that the Fire Elemental Battlecry does anyway. So it's kind of like playing it, and you still have Fire Elemental for next turn. You are overloaded for 1, but not really a problem when you're on 10 mana here.
Hot Spring over Totem as well, representing the fact now, I talked about it before, he was trying with all of his might to get those Hot Spring Guardians to come down post Alexstrasza to really be the full value heal. But now Japan have indicated that they are just going to start the burn plan, as you've been talking about. Sometimes you can just throw damage at face. This deck actually has more damage in it than Freeze Mage, despite not being a purely focused burn deck like Freeze Mage is. It actually just has more total damage because of the inclusion of the Firelands portals, for one.
Yeah, the damage is just slower to do in terms of turns.
But so Innovan has had to respect that and now just bailed out of the plan, started to heal back up with Hot Spring Guardians, and now Japan are down to just having that 17 damage in hand, but the pickup of the Medivh's Valet now gets them over the line once again. Fireball ping is 7, Medivh's Valet ping is 4, means they can just get it all there in the end. Pyroblast will still finish the job.
Yeah, it's something, again, that, few players kind of forget about. Medivh's Valet is great for trading with minions. The Battlecry is the same as the Fire Elementals. The minion is just smaller, but a lot cheaper as well. But a lot of the time, I've won games before we just double Medivh's Valet to face. That's 6 damage, 2/2/3s on the board. Okay, I'm good for that, all for 4 mana. So we are going to see it again. B787 praying no more heals, please. I've set you up for Pyroblast. This setup is very obvious for Innovan. When your opponent puts you to 10, you know what's coming next turn. But Kalimos off the top, we can see that the Hot Spring Guardian would have kept him alive anyway. But Kalimos, why not at this point? Actually, he could just Elemental and Hot Spring. Clear up the 2/3. To clear the board, play the Hot Spring.
He could. So yeah,
he's safe, right?
I'm starting to wonder. Yeah, he's seen
Fireball.
He's seen 1 Fireball be used. So with no random cards in hand, there is no way that 14 damage or 13 damage can get done. So he is safe to just go Hot Spring Guardian. Hot Spring and Fire Elemental, of course, both elementals in their own right, so his Kalimos will still be active for the next turn to pick up the big heal. And it does seem to just, answer this board state a lot cleaner, allow you to go face with your existing minions and then set up an Ice Block pop for the following turn. But actually, looking at it, does Kalimos set up a proc anyway on the following turn? I think it still does potentially, right? But overall,
depending on how the attacks go.
Right, but overall, if this Hot Spring Guardian play is 100% safe, as we've just theorized it is, then this is just a stronger play over the course of 2 turns.
Well, I like it as well because this looks like a last-ditch effort, as Innovan only has 1 card in hand. This might draw out more burn from B7, and then you play Kalimos, and you're like, right. And if you Kalimos up to around 15, it means that Alexstrasza's impact is much less. You cannot, if you Kalimos up to like 20 odd, then Alexstrasza really helps out. We are going to see a Pyroblast. It even turns around, it's like, ooh, that was a close one, but he knows he can drop down Kalimos, heal all the way back up again. And now the question really is on B7 as to whether he can even have enough left now.
And look at the reaction from B7. He cannot believe it. He thought that second Hot Spring was all that he was going to have to beat this turn, did not give his opponent credit for having that Kalimos in hand, and that is a situation that you mentioned that Italy created. They calculated that the small heal on its own will be sufficient and suckered B787 into exactly that feeling you see there. That is the face of a man that thought he had a chance and has just seen it be crushed.
Okay, so options here. Priest at the Feast into Ice Block doesn't change anything. Molten Reflection doesn't change anything. Unlicensed Apothecary potentially kills you quicker. And maybe that's the play. Apothecary into Mana Worm, GG. That would be a pretty flashy way to end it.
It's stylish, if nothing else.
Because the issue here is it's not just that the block's procced, it's that the block's procced and the Ice Barrier does nothing on this board.
Yes.
So, you know your block is getting procced again. Priest of the Feast is going to be the choice here for B7, purely, I think, because it's just the best minion there.
Yes, the heal is of completely zero consequence in this spot. He played it because he might as well just get the correct sequencing, but it literally does almost nothing to this board state. It just creates a couple of extra attacks necessary for Italy in this spot.
I've got to click a few more times. Maybe B7 is going for the overall fatigue game in this matchup between Japan and Italy. It's like, okay, if they have to click a few more times, maybe it'll make a difference later on.
So 3 damage needs to go face to get the proc at 1, which means a 2 and a 1 are probably going face to do this job, which means Fire Elemental going into the 3/6 definitely makes a lot of sense. You don't 100% have to have the proc at 1 here, because it's not like you're playing any cards in your deck that will do 1 damage. Your J-Claws is equipped for 2, so even if you were to proc at 2, that would be perfectly reasonable, but they have more than enough flexibility here to Italy in the way these attacks go through to be able to pop this block perfectly at 1 and just set up the clean lethal situation for the next turn. Nope, gonna go ahead and do it at 2 anyway for exactly the reasons that I just described.
Yeah, you need Ice Lance and Nova and no spells, right? You know, it's a big ask here. Italy may as well keep hold that Flame Elemental in hand. Bulk Potion not going to be enough. And it was a close one. B787 actually set up what he thought was lethal twice, but the additional heals in the Shaming deck here from Italy actually just kept him alive just long enough to clinch the win, and there just wasn't as much burn left. We saw the Frostbolts get used to clear up minions early on as well, and that's definitely a consideration. A lot of the time you can do the old, Frostbolt Fireball for 15 from hand, and also no Alexstrasza, which was probably very important and led to the potential of the Pyroblast being used on that turn, drop him to 3, Kalimos on demand for the heal.
But you saw Italy from their side really read that state of the game perfectly. They held on to their Hot Spring Guardians, wanting to use them after Alexstrasza. Once they accepted that this wasn't going to be an Alexstrasza game, they started healing up with the Hot Spring Guardians, and specifically that second one was an excellent evaluation of the game state and allowed that Kalimos to really crush. And remember, I mentioned before, this is one of the most important games for me that we've seen so far, because both of these teams are 1-0 in the group, and it's in a group that is wide open. It's a group that's waiting for someone to really come and run away with it. So whoever wins this matchup is potentially that team that is going to run away with the group.
Yeah, and we are going into the next game very shortly. It's going to be Yawgmoth versus Gundam Flame, and it's something we didn't mention earlier on in the format, but there was potential these two players didn't have to play if there was a 3-0. Yep. So they're going to be queued up 4th for the team. Gundam Flame on the Priest versus Yawgmoth on the Priest. Very, very interesting indeed. I think these picks were nods out to the other classes of their opponents. So Priest does quite well versus Hunter, mainly because Potion of Madness just wins a lot of the time.
Yes.
And then Priest probably does better versus Rogue than Hunter can a lot of the time, unless it's a fairly... What?
Priest does better against Rogue than Hunter does?
I think so. Depending on the priest build.
You're a crazy man.
I am crazy.
All right.
It's confirmed. Depending on the priest build. What priest build do you think it is? Do you think it's the miracle version with like Lyra?
I don't think it matters. I mean, the solution to beating Rogue these days is just to kill them, and Hunter is going to do a better job of that than Priest is ever going to.
Dragonfire Potion does well versus 5/5s.
Great. You killed like 2 mana's worth of stuff with your 6 mana AoE.
Yeah, and then they run out of cards and you win.
They definitely don't.
You can see the players getting ready there. Gundam Flame on the right. Play we've talked about a good amount. He's a very prolific player. We can check out some more about him now. Won the summer prelim and was in the championship as well. Also, we've just seen a lot out of him in general. Definitely one of the cool players. Likes his aggressive styles, as we can see, and we saw that out of him as well. I think Dragon Warrior was one of his big decks, although not a truly face deck. He played it in a very aggressive manner and can be opened up with Corcoran Elites at the time.
Yeah, he was playing kind of the quad aggro lineup that we talked about a lot at HCT events before the quad aggro lineup was cool. This event, the APAC Summer Prelim that he won, that was the first purely Japanese event that I got to cast, and was my first big exposure to Gundam Flame as well. And he played a massively aggressive lineup with tremendous aplomb, making really tough decisions about ignoring Violet Teachers, for example, which normally just goes off as a big alarm bell, as a thing that you have to kill as an aggro deck, because the 1/1s just create too much value coming back against you, stop you from sticking minions to the board. But he recognized situations where just killing it wasn't necessary. He just kept developing, kept hitting face, and was just getting there. And it sounds very simple when you put it like that, but believe me, guys, there is an art to playing aggro decks at a high level. You know, if you're jamming ladder at rank 15 or whatever, then maybe the aggro decks you're losing to are somewhat inelegant. But at the very highest level, these guys absolutely know what they're doing. But I'm surprised, which is the point I wanted to lead to, that we are seeing Gundam Flame on priest duties. Because as mentioned there in his bio, and as I've just been selling to you, this man is an aggro god. Can he wind it all back
there might be
and run the priest?
Okay. Double Mind Blast, go.
I think the more salient point is that this is truly a team effort. We haven't really talked about this yet because both teams are playing entirely separate from what we've seen so far. No one is sharing a location. But for every game, it's not 1v1. Every member of the team is welcome and in almost all cases have been together on communications and talking through each play for each deck. So you don't necessarily need to stick 100% to having the best pilot for each deck playing because it is such a collaborative effort.
Yeah, I think as long as you get ground rules down of, okay, if you end up on priest, let me make the calls, for example, then that's fine. Absolutely fine. Do you see this is now looking like a potential silence priest with the inner fire? I know this is a deck you've messed with, you know, to a reasonable amount. Yeah, I was going to say way more than I have. I'll hold my hands up on that one. I'm more on the smoke style list. But, you know, what do you think about this list versus what appears to be a dragon priest? Like, have you even played this matchup that much?
I have played a good chunk of it. Silence Priest was one of the decks that I was playing over the last couple of days where I was trying to make a cheeky top 200 push on NA just over the last couple of days. I quickly bailed out and went to Hunter because I wasn't finding the right matchups for it. I was just running into...
You came to the true light.
I was just running into, believe it or not, Rogues, which is just not a good matchup, Raven.
Versus Silence Priest.
Yeah, well, all right, whatever. But it's a very, very powerful deck, especially this new build that Tyler has put together, which actually removes a lot of situational cards that I was playing early on when I tried to put the deck together myself, almost on day 1, day 2 of the expansion. It's not running all the Shadow Word Pains and Shadow Word Deaths and classic priest removal that you're used to seeing. The only situational cards that are being played are the necessities to just calling your deck Silence Priest, right? The Ancient Watchers, the Faceless Shamblers, the Silence cards themselves. If you start then jamming Shadow Word Pains and that kind of stuff in your deck as well, then your deck just becomes too situational, and you just get classic priest hands that do nothing.
Yeah, it's definitely a cool list and wants to put, you know, apply the pressure on, as you said, because when I played against Silence Priest, a lot of the time when they drop, you know, whatever minion they choose to start to buff, I actually just don't have a good answer for it. There aren't actually that many cards that people play at the moment that can deal with a big dude. You know, there just doesn't really exist. On top of the priest being able to heal it, you're like, oh, do I race this?
Yeah.
Like, I don't. Can I race this? I just don't know. Whereas at least for Italy here, they probably have cards like Death, like Pain in the list to try and help out at least to deal with some of these big guys.
Yeah, important to note that as of right now, Yawgmoth and Italy have no idea what kind of priest deck they're up against. The Acolyte of Pain coming down is probably a little bit of an indicator because it's not a massively commonly played card. Potion of Madness can do a little bit of work for them sometime in the future. It will just give them a free card draw now if they want to cycle it, but they can potentially use it in the future to use that Acolyte of Pain to kill another minion while getting a card draw, which would be the ideal use of the card.
Yeah, Curious Glimmer is just an option here. Is just slam the 3/3. It'll start potentially trading with these minions on board. If you do like the cute, you know, cleric trade heal, then well, your opponent gets a heal as well. Ooh, pint size, Nova, another cleric.
It's cleric. You've already seen cleric, so it's 100% cleric. Yeah.
Wish you could get pint size though.
Pint size would be pretty sick with this hand. Yeah. I mean, they're thinking about it. I'm not sure why they're thinking about it. They've seen Nausea Cleric already.
Yep. They're like, discover a card from your opponent's deck. It's like, no!
Which one would I like?
Yeah.
I mean, I have admittedly made that
I've done
mistake
that as
before.
well. Yeah.
I think everyone will at least once. Even like, not even necessarily like before you've, like the first time you're playing the card. Like once or twice, you just forget. It's just like, oh yeah,
I've been like, Claw would be sick right now. Oh, God. Okay.
Yep.
Another Potion of Madness now for Gundam Flame this time. Shadow Vision's going to be very important, I feel. You know, how impactful is Shadow Vision's in this list in terms of getting the Divine Spirits, the Inner Fires, you know?
The reason why Silence Priest never really worked before is that you went all in on a minion, you know, you jammed Divine Spirit on something, then even if you held back the Inner Fire, if they answered your thing that had Divine Spirit jammed on it, suddenly your deck is lacking so much power to end the game. Shadow Visions lets you pick up extra copies of Divine Spirit and Inner Fire, so you can go all in once and actually have magical resources that weren't supposed to be in your deck to actually push all in a second time, which is never really supposed to work when you push all in once and lose. That's just not how all in is supposed to work, Raven.
Yeah, definitely not. This is kind of cute though, just stealing the Cleric to get multiple card draws, denying the card draw for Yawgmoth and being able to clear off the Cleric. Does leave the Glimmer Root alive, but you know, you just took a trip to Value Town there and just got so many additional cards, and card advantage in matchups like these is huge, especially I think for the Silence Priest and for Gundam Flame here, because like you said, the issue was not having the pieces, right? But you know, the more you draw, well, suddenly your hands follow the answers to the questions. You can actually just build up those threats. So it's looking pretty good for Gundam Flame so far.
Yeah,
all on Italy here.
The slight disappointment from Japan's side here is that they haven't managed to get Humongous Razorleaf or Ancient Watcher online yet, because in this matchup against Dragon Priest or against any kind of slower priest, that's one of the big ways that you can win, because as you mentioned, unless you get a big OTK Divine Spirit in a fire, if you just make a huge minion on board, they have answers for that. Whereas, you know, if you just go turn 2 Watcher, silence it, turn 3 Humongous Razorleaf, Faceless Shambler it, then you can just hit away with like massive 4-attack minions.
Just get them, yeah.
Just repetitive damage turn after turn after turn that they can't deal with. So the fact that Japan hasn't been able to get that kind of stuff online is meaning they're going to struggle in this matchup just a little bit more than they might, but they are just starting to get there now with 1 or 2 of these cards.
Yep, so the discovered, if that's the correct word or not, Cleric going to come down for Yawgmoth. Going to start just building up this board a little bit. Still the Cleric on Gundam Flame's side is available to get some value from healing, but again, you pass over more cards for Yawgmoth if you start doing the heals now. This is definitely a tough one, though. Do you take a slow turn here? Get the Watcher on board?
It's not particularly slow, right? You're playing Yeti on turn 4. It's not the end of the world.
Do you want to Purify this turn?
Well, I don't think you're taking the heal exchange. I think the 1-3 probably does just go into the 3-1 and you dominate the board with the Yeti, and there you go. Now is a Razorleaf. This is exactly the chain of turns I was just talking about.
That animation, though, with the Razorleaf. Wow.
Watcher and Silence It, Razorleaf and Shambler It was the combination of cards that I mentioned. That looks like a possible chain of events over the next couple of turns now, but there are now 2 Dragonfire potions in hand for Yawgmoth, which is one of the only ways that Priest can even come close to dealing with that kind of board state.
Yeah. There is a Divine Spirit and Inner Fire in hand as well. There's 2 Shamblers, in fact. And the 1 Shadow Visions has a chance to get maybe, you know, another Divine Spirit, for example. So yeah, the Operative come down now. Powered Shield, Divine Spirit, or Wild Pyro is the options. I imagine Powered Shield is going to be the pick just for the raw value potential.
Divine Spirit is actually really strong against Silence Priest, because if they want to deal with it, they have to use one of their silence effects, which is a huge loss for them.
Can't be Purify.
Exactly. It can't be Purify, and most of the lists are not playing Cabal Songstealer anymore, at least the ones that are following along Tyler's path that he had a lot of success with. So in that case, you're looking for specifically the 0-mana Silence to deal with Divine Spirit, because of course, classically as well, the deck is not playing just straight up hard removal like Shadow Word Death.
Yeah.
So if you just suddenly have a 5/12 on the board, that's a nightmare for them to deal with.
Okay, so the options here is it could actually, Gundam Flame could go for the Divine Spirit onto the Watcher, because the problem here is the Watcher just dies to the Operative at this point.
Yes.
You go for the Divine Spirit and get the Razorleaf down, and then just, you know, you can either trade off the Cleric, go aggressive, but I think it's important to not lose this Watcher this turn.
I would agree with that, yeah, so Razorleaf and Divine Spirit this turn gives you the opportunity to potentially faceless a 4/10 on the following turn if you're not trading, and you have the bailout if the Ancient Watcher gets dealt with or gets injured. You know, something you can do against this deck is just trade into lower health, because it plays around Divine Spirit and Faceless Shambler if you just do preemptive damage to minions. If that happens, then there's still the 4-8 on the board hitting away. So, yep, I like this play. I like where Japan have ended up with their thought process. And now, are they going to respect the Nausea Cleric, or are they just going to start trying to push some damage?
It's going to be interesting because the Nausea Cleric only gets immediate value if the operative goes into one of the minions that doesn't kill any of the minions. So you'd probably be like, yeah, just take the damage, get him.
Gundam Flame believes. It's like, no, guys, this is 4 damage. This is hitting him in the face. This is how we win. This is just how this man thinks.
I mean, he could potentially go Shadow Visions into the second Divine Spirit, and it has Inner Fire as well. So there is a chance that you could just go really big out of nowhere and just kill him, which is, you know, I imagine happens reasonably often with the deck.
It does. I know, like, if you've ever, frequented, fairly casual forums, for example, like we in the UK have our Hearthstone UK community group on Facebook, where it's
glorious.
It's a lot of newer players and casual players or whatever. Whenever a casual player experiences Silence Priest for the first time, there's always the screenshot that comes out, right? Of like, I made a 2020. When actually you're like, yeah, that's just what the deck does. You do that pretty much every game. It's not screenshot worthy anymore.
Okay, well, Talon Priest, the Razor Leaf being a 4-1 is obviously a problem with the Faceless, so it's just going to create a 4-1 if he chooses to do it now. The Talon Priest plus heal might just be reasonable this turn in terms of just getting the Razor Leaf a bit higher on health to threaten it the following turns.
You saw, though, that Dragonfire Potion was far less than perfect, but it's exactly what I talked about the previous turn. It shuts down Faceless Shambler. It shuts down a second Divine Spirit because you lower the health of the existing minions so much. These kind of plays are very, very important if you're going to consistently beat this deck. You cannot leave minions with high health sticking around on the board, so if you can't kill the minion, just injure it as much as you can.
Yeah, I was just wondering whether you ever even think about Inner Fire in the operative here. Just to lower it down. Hopefully the Razor Leaf lives unless there's some form of additional AoE, and then you can start working with the Faceless Shamblers the following turn.
It's a big win condition that you're throwing in the dumpster, though.
You've got 4 attack minions for days. It's fine.
Swear jar, Raven. Come on, pound in the swear jar.
I didn't mention why. It's good.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
It was just stating facts.
All right, that's fair. Saved yourself a pound.
Yes. Okay, so Potion of Madness is going to now clear up the Cleric for Gundam Flames Cleric for Yogg.
Gundam Flames sat there like, I wish I didn't show them that play. That's really annoying when it happens against you.
I taught them a new trick.
Yeah.
They're learning. Nether Spike going to get some value, but I feel like for Yawgmoth, this matchup is more about just not getting killed than anything else. And once you've cleared the few threats that there are in the deck, you're probably feeling pretty safe. Another Power Word Shield as well.
Chaining the shields. Looking for specific answers here. Shadow of Pain would be available, but without hitting anything else to do with the mana, just goes Historian, Dragon Lord, Scaled Nightmare, and Fairy Dragon are the pickups. Nothing particularly exciting. Even
I think Deathwing is an exciting card.
Well, I mean, original Deathwing, full fat original red Deathwing would have been, at least an emergency answer to a board state that you've run out of removal for. But, Diet Deathwing in this case just isn't really going to get the job done. You're very rarely just going to be able to spend 10 mana on a 12/12 in this matchup because your opponent is attempting, at least, to continually put you in awkward board states.
He's a badass, though. So, something you got to think about sometimes.
Good point.
Yeah,
well made.
Look. Sometimes you got to think about these things.
Yeah.
Both players now join into Radiant Elementals, which means it's crazy shenanigans can happen. Gundam Flame does have a Shadow Visions, and I feel like this might be the time to get it online here because the everything else doesn't do anything. The Shamblers, there's nothing good on board at the moment. You really need to make something pretty good happen, and that's probably going to be in the form of either a Divine Spirit or, just chaining into more cards going forward. Pyromancer going to help clear up this operative with the trade from the Talon Priest plus a spell as well.
Yeah, there is a very finite amount of resources that can end the game in this Silence Priest deck. So we've already seen one Divine Spirit get used. We've seen one Cabal Talon Priest get used without that health being doubled by a Divine Spirit. Yeah. So that's being thrown away. We see 2 Shamblers sat in hand that are not representing value. So personally for me, before too many cards get drawn with this kind of play that we're seeing, I would like to see Japan try and Shadow Vision some of those higher impact cards, the Divine Spirit and the Inner Fire, before they get drawn and that possibility gets removed.
I have played some Priest games where I just Shadow Vision, so I'm like, that was my only choice.
Yeah.
I used all my spells. awkward. So yeah, I do agree. You know, you can actually just run out of value.
Well, in that
here.
case, you can just bug your opponent out of the game, right? And just keep.
That's been fixed now, I believe. But yes, I would have tried if I could.
Yeah,
I didn't have the elementals.
Elementals.
Yeah. But yeah, you know, you definitely do need to get this value because, as you said, some of the key cards are already just going away. And I imagine this Silence Priest doesn't run Elise.
Not. I mean, if it's the conventional
as far as
list,
you're aware,
then no. Yeah. So is this an operative being played here? It is, right? Hidden away behind the options. Talon Priest, Radiant, and Power Word Shield. 3 Radiant Elementals is a pretty spectacular combination. It would let you play a free Shadow Word Death and create all kinds of madness with an
Only
Elise
there was
coming
Lyra
down,
as well.
Yeah, sorry, Lyra is what I meant.
with Elise coming down, you can play Elise.
Yeah,
It's like,
right.
If you have 5
Good
mana.
job.
Yeah. Top-notch analysis as always, so I expect
Thanks,
nothing less.
buddy.
Double Radiant Elemental now for Gundam Flame means that these Shadow Visions are free, and the spells you get from them are potentially very cheap. I have seen Radiant Elementals get pretty high health themselves just because of things like this going off.
But again, there is the Lyra available for Japan. So again, both Radiant Elementals getting played here means that the eventual power of the Lyra turn is taken down significantly. So
I genuinely
tough
worry.
spot.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough one because the second Dragon Priest gets on the board and stays there. That's how you lose. Like that's definitely their win condition. It looks like Gundam Flame's playing with the idea of a double Radiance. I suppose with 6 mana left, you could probably happily just play the one. The Shadow Visions are only 1 mana, so that you go down to 4 if you play them both. Yeah, I don't mind this. Oh, Divine Spirit.
there is an extra Divine Spirit, but he doesn't have a good baseline for the Divine Spirit right now. Nothing that can really start pushing.
You know about it, he's got a 4 mana 1/1 he can build on.
Shadow Vision's number 2. He's now drawn a Silence, which removes that from the pool, at least one of the silences from the cards that he can discover. Now Divine Spirit number 2 was being offered, but he's just sticking with these Power Word Shields. And this is important because, yes, exactly, he needs to get to a baseline minion here, like the Humongous Razor Leaf, to be able to try and generate some pressure. But speaking of pressure, a near endless chain of 5-6 minions that draw a card is pretty strong pressure now from the Priest side.
Absolutely. And what do you think of the... so I was just going to ask, actually, the Razor Leaf being played that turn was a bit of a surprise to me, actually. Because, yes, it opens up for double Shambler, but also it opens up for the Razor Leaf just dying.
Yes.
What if it just gets killed? And then you're like, well, oh, I'm in the same problem. Whereas next turn, he could have gone Razor Leaf Shambler and at least got 2 on the, you know, something on the board to stick.
Yeah.
Because now he's got nothing again. And suddenly he hasn't got the juice with the Elementals either to start, you know, chaining draws again. So unless Lyra exactly comes off the top here for Gundam Flame, I feel like that Humongous Razor Leaf was a bit of a too quick a judgment, I think.
It's true. I am inclined to agree with you in that situation. Yeah, I think with these 2 Shamblers in hand, you want to create a situation where you are activating one of them certainly.
Yeah, at least one, yeah.
You can do in the same turn if you just held onto it there. The problem is that you give your opponent another turn to develop, which is something you spoke about the previous turn, right? If he just sat there and played nothing that turn, we wouldn't have seen Dragonfire Potion come out. We would have seen Scaled Nightmare or Draconid Operative hit the board. And then how are you climbing back, even with 2 4/8s on the board? How are you climbing back against that? So
definitely a tough one.
Gundam just felt the need to try and get a grip straight away. That grip has been loosened, and now an almost irreversible grip. Yes, it can be silenced, but it is still a 4/12 after all.
And also as well, there's 1 Ysera card in hand. We can see there's an Operative, Elise, Radiant. There's still Priest of the Feast if things get really dicey, just to heal up a little bit. This is so much value, and this is the tip. If you look at this board state, this is kind of why Dragon Priest is still played now and again, even though people are playing with some other, you know, a lot of variants of Priest lists actually.
Yeah.
In terms of, there's the Silence one, there's just the do things Priest that I still don't understand quite how it wins. it just can do things, but I'm not sure whether those things are even good enough. You know what I mean?
It felt like I was casting with Lorinda all of a sudden.
Yeah, I role-played Lorinda for a second, just things a couple of times.
That thing that it does, Priest.
Yeah.
It's a classic Lorinda call.
It makes sense with that Priest list,
Yeah.
so I'm taking it.
Okay.
But yeah, like, just so much value, so much power. Why not have a Lyra? just take it.
How about a 4/24 Ysera? Live the dream! No, don't. It'll just get silenced.
1-4 away from a Twitch chat comment, I think. But the Lyra...
Humongous Razor Leaf makes things happen quite often. Powered Shield Divine Spirit is a combination that happens quite often. Just saying.
Good to know.
Yep.
Good to know. Young Innocent Me does not play such crazy decks as Silence Priest. Just get him with Hunter. But Yawgmoth is getting him as well. Look at all this power. Now there's Emerald Drake. There's Lyra, Powered Shield, Nightmare. There's a Braiding Elemental. Somehow Gundam Flame could clear this whole board, and he is still in trouble at this point.
Yeah, you're dead, mate. Sorry, Gundam Flame. I'm a big fan, but you have been outclassed in the battle of the Priest decks here, and it really has come down to not enough of the 4-attack baseline minions being drawn early and being drawn even in the mid game. He had to scramble so hard for that Faceless Shambler. Double Shadow Visions to pick up 2 Power Word Shields to try and cycle, just picking one up at the end, but well and truly lost his grip on the board. And when this deck does lose its grip, there's no Dragonfire Potion usually, there's no Holy Nova usually, there's no Deaths and Pains even most of the time. So if you lose your grip on the board, it's just kind of a slow march to your inevitable death.
Yeah, well, the deck is definitely, it's the opposite of a toolbox deck, right? It does one thing very, very, very well, but it was not good enough in this game. And that is going to be Yawgmoth actually taking the win, and Italy taking the win over Japan. 3-1. Very strong performance from these guys.
And again, what that means for the texture of that group is that it's now Italy who are potentially running away with it. That was the 2 remaining 1-0 teams in their group. That was a showdown right at the top. Italy vanquishing Japan. So in a group that you would look at, and there's no Germany, there's no Ukraine, there's no Russia.
You can't just throw everyone up in there and see where they land, right?
There is no phenomenal, world-class, full of world beaters Hearthstone team in that group. So there was an opening for someone to really go for the jugular and make a push, and that is what Italy have done in the end in this matchup. They are now 2-0 in Hearthstone Global Games.
Yeah, looking very good. We can see just how the matchup went overall. Tansoku taking the first game for Japan with that very, very quick Druid win, but then Italy just turning up the heat, winning with Warrior, Shaman, and Priest, which is just interesting as well, because there is the Warrior as well, of course, you know, which is a very strong class in general, but Priest and Shaman, I feel, are still like on the cusp of, you know, trying to be discovered as to how good they could potentially be.
Yeah, turn down Rogue to play the Shaman. Hunter versus Priest, I think those 2 classes are about the same power level if you were going to do a tier list just purely on class strength right now. But, you know, turning down Rogue to play Shaman is definitely a risky decision in a lot of worlds, because Rogue, by many people, considered to be one of the most powerful classes. If you really are a comfortable Caverns Below player, then it offers you tremendous amounts of power. If you don't know what you're doing, then the deck's hopeless. But, you know, still...
Draw bounces.
In competitive format, that does help. In competitive format, it's still one of the most powerful decks in the meta for sure.
Yeah, and I believe we have Inovan from Team Italy on the line for an interview. Hey, congratulations on the win, Inovan. How is it going? How are you feeling?
Thank you. Very, very good.
Sorry, I was going to say, after the first loss against Japan, were you feeling a little bit worried after that, or were you still confident with a lot more games to potentially to be played out?
Yeah, we were a lot worried because we thought this druid was J druid.
We did too.
We did too. Yeah.
Yeah, because druid with shaman, we thought, well, it can't be token druid, right?
Right.
It doesn't cover the weakness of shaman. Doesn't cover the weakness of token druid, so it's J druid. No, we lost this, but we won the shaman one, the shaman versus Medivh Mage. Wow, that was insane.
So, if I've got this right, all 4 of the members on Italy are actually representing the same team. Is that correct? So, does that does that help you when it comes to, you know, planning strategies for tournaments, etc.? That's something that you've all been through together before, presumably, right? So, have you felt that's helped you in this tournament?
Yeah, this helped a lot. Like, we are friends, but that's the more important things. And yeah. We are from the same team. We can speak a lot. We are confident with our decisions.
And looking at your group, when you found out what group you were in, what did you think of the rest of the group? What were the teams you were really worried about facing, thought were the strong ones? Or did you guys think you were, you know, like, you're the best team in the group, you're going to come out on top?
We are pretty good, but because we... the real thing is the best in the groups are probably Norway and Japan, but we won against them, so it's good.
Yeah,
it's really good.
So easy pickings from here. That's what you're saying, right? Everyone else is free. Is that the point?
Yeah, it's like,
You can ignore him. He's basically trying to make you commit to saying you'll beat everyone else, which is definitely a risky thing. But no, thanks a lot for your time. Congratulations again on the win, and we'll be seeing you back at HGG. Good luck.
Thank you.
It's awesome to hear from Inovan there. And it's, again, the point you brought up, he was like, yeah, being on a team and playing with these guys before HGG even started definitely helps.
Right, I mean, it's not even so much just the communication. I mean, over the course of a couple of weeks, 4 human beings can learn how to talk to each other. It's pre-tournament preparation that I'm really looking at, because they will already have gone through the meta, just prepping for open cups, deciding what to play on ladder.
And they just know how each other work, right?
Like, they will know and already agree on which decks they favor, so there will not be as much friction in terms of who wants to play what, which decks are good, which tech cards do we play. They will already have a baseline for all that stuff laid out.
Yeah, we can start to see some of the winning and key moments within this series. Japan went up very quickly with the Druid win that was just snowballed very much from the beginning. And then there was the slow, drawn-out Quest Warrior Mirror, where it looked like Italy was so far ahead, but it ended up being very, very close indeed. But Turner did end up taking the win here.
Yeah, 1 turn in it in the end, as after being 4 or 5 turns ahead on the Quest, it was only 1 additional turn for Turner that he would have needed to end up losing that game instead of squaring up the series 1-1. And if Japan had taken a 2-0 lead in this spot, which, even down to that Curator getting pulled by the Dirty Rat was a huge break point in the matchup. If Japan were able to get the 2-0 lead, we probably would have seen the series just snowball from there, potentially.
That's definitely 1 turner away from being a lost game there for Italy. Then we saw, pretty cool matchup, actually. The Discover Mage from B787, probably what's aiming to be his new signature deck, the new rotations hit, versus the Jade Elemental Shaman. I was mentioning earlier that I still don't really know where Shaman sits in terms of what's good and what's not. There is so much experimentation going on, and we did see just the sheer power of the Jades get the work done after this. This Volcano was probably MVP, actually. Yeah. You look at the board state, and the health that is on 1 hit from those minions suddenly puts Inovan in a very tight position.
Absolutely, and I think, you heard it from me in the matchup itself. Until we saw real identifying cards like Servant of Kalamos and Firefly get drawn, I wasn't sure whether we were going to be seeing the Spirit Echo Jade deck or the Jade.
We were wondering where the Jade Spirits were.
Right, there was Bloodlust in the opening hand that was a hint as well, but all this kind of stuff, there's always so much up in the air with what you're going to come up against Shaman, and this was just an unfortunate match in the end for Gundam Flame. I think he fought valiantly, maybe 1 questionable play with the second humongous Razor Leaf, which is definitely defensible for the reasons that I brought up at the time, but wasn't really able to get a 4-attack minion to stick and then just start going crazy with it, which is really your goal in that matchup, is just to get a 2-drop down, get a 3-drop down, just snowball it as hard as you can, because if it goes as late as that last matchup did, the more controlling Priest, which Dragon Priest is going to take over eventually.
Yeah, and just Dragon Priest just doesn't rely on as many combinations of cards, right? You just play an Operative. If you have a Dragon in your hand, Operative's pretty good. Like, it's just a 5/6 that discovers additional card. I think we might be able to check out the groups and see how it's going to be lining up after that win in a minute. So that was definitely a cool series overall. I definitely didn't really know who was going to win that one. It was kind of a surprise either way. What do you think, like, the key point in those matchups were, like, in how the series went overall?
I think, Japan got off to a really good start. I love that, Italy admitted that they kind of, got debated by the Druid at the start. It's, we always, as casters, have to kind of guess to that kind of thing going on, so it's nice to get that confirmation. But from there, it was just 3 fairly straightforward matchups in the end from Italy that was able to clutch it out.
Yeah, and we can see how the rankings looking at the moment for Group E. Italy sitting pretty at the top there, 2-0 with a 6-2 game record as well. Very nice for them. Finland, now Japan and Norway all 1-1. Finland with a slightly better game record, and then Chile and Israel at the bottom. Still got to catch up a couple of games. They just need to play 1 more match to catch up with the rest of the group. But they've got a long way to go as well. But Italy are the main ones. The group of already teammates, already friends, got the practice in and get it done already. So we've got plenty more Hearthstone Global Games coming up, guys. So don't go anywhere. We'll be back soon.
We're almost there. Quiet down, everyone. This is not like any of our previous expeditions. This will be far more ambitious. We're stepping into a land of primordial wonder. Infused with astonishing elemental energies. The plant life here holds very unusual properties. So don't touch anything. And while you may be excited to see the local fauna, you might want to make sure they don't see you. Because their powers of adaptation are devastating. Make no mistake, we will be tested at every turn. But if we stay on our guard, we might just survive. Now then, are you ready? Then let's journey into Ongoro Crater.